What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Stochastic NFL DFS extravaganza for Sunday wild card weekend. That was an insane game last night. The Jaguars coming back from 27 points down, the third largest comeback in playoff history, and the announcers almost stayed awake for the whole thing. We've got the No House Advantage show here to start us off this morning with this three-game Sunday slate, a very exciting one, and we're going to talk about all the NHA strategy to help you take down some huge prizes over there. I'm Matt Savoca. What's going on, guys? At Draftaholic, and with me today is Geoff Ulrich. Follow him at the Fantasy Grind. What's up, man? How about those games yesterday?
Yeah, no, crazy, especially the nightcap, obviously. The 49ers one was kind of interesting, but again, like 49ers just keep proving themselves like what an absolute team of alphas they are, just capable of turning it up at a drop of the hat. So, but man, yeah, credit to Doug Peterson, my favorite head coach in the league. It's not shocked that he was able to overcome it. But man, yeah, I mean, we got some matchups today that I think could be a little bit more interesting than people think too. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I certainly hope so. And I wish we had more time to recap what just happened, but we've only got a few minutes, less than half an hour to break down this NHA slate before we turn it over to the rest of the crew. And we got a three-gamer. You mentioned it. There are two games that kind of feel like they're in the books already, to be completely honest, with Miami at plus 14 against the Bills on the road and Baltimore on the road at Cincinnati, 10-point underdogs. So let's start there. Let's just start with some slate strategy. What are you seeing in those two games? Or you can talk about Giants, Minnesota, that feel like the slate might be a little bit more interesting than people might see right when they see the spreads.
Yeah. So quick, my thoughts are, I think Buffalo is absolutely going to destroy Miami. I think Josh Allen could throw for like 4 passing touchdowns, kind of like he did in the last game. So, again, maybe get some garbage time action from Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill. That is something to consider. Like Miami could be so far down that those guys just get there from garbage time. I think that Minnesota could come out pretty quick on the New York, and but again, guys like Richie James Jr., those wide receivers could also benefit just from the game flow. And then I think that the Cincinnati Baltimore game could just be really ugly. And I actually think that's I don't expect the Bengals to lose, but if there's going to be an upset today, that's where it would be. It's a division opponent. I do think Baltimore could still run the ball. And I think J.K. Dobbins could have a big day. So, again, I'm not expecting any upsets, but if there's going to come one, I think it's going to be from Baltimore with their defensive and offensive line kind of dominating things. So something to think about there.
I like those calls. I'm personally a little bit more of a cynic when it comes to these possible sludge fests, but I like the range of outcomes we're already talking about. And guys, I know it's early for you, especially if you're not on the East Coast, but make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know that shows like this are going live. You guys will get all the info you need. And remember, guys, we don't just have tools for things like the big platforms, FanDuel, DraftKings, things we're going to get you set for the rest of the way on this show. But at NHA, they have huge overlays for these pick'em contests. They have the versus the house contest as well. And they've actually changed things up because it's a 3-game slate where they typically have these 1-game slates. It's you can pick your confidence picks starting with the number 10, and then you can move down from there instead of sometimes on the 1-game slate, it starts with 7. There are 34 total players on the board. Now, some of them shouldn't be chosen because they're probably going to be inactive, looking at you, Teddy Bridgewater, but it gives us a lot more optionality than we sometimes have on these NHA slates. So if there was ever a time to get into the action, to dip your toes into the water of the NHA pool, I think it would be this wild card weekend. And we got a great offer for you over at Stochastic right now, because when you sign up over there with the link in the video description below, you can get up to a $100 first match deposit bonus. And remember, guys, there are so many ways to play over there. Not only is it not just NFL, they've got NHL, MLB when it comes back, NASCAR, tons of other sports, and the versus the house mode. You can win up to 21x your entry fee when you place all the correct bets as well. So it's just a really good time to get into the action over there. We got to race ahead though, because we got to talk quarterbacks, and we got a couple of good ones and then a couple of iffy quarterbacks, I'll say. So let's start with the good. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and even Kirk Cousins have really decent projections today. Burrow's sitting at 280.5 as a prop line, 2.5 touchdowns. Josh Allen at 265.5, thinking that there might be more with his legs. And Kirk Cousins against a bad New York Giants secondary is sitting at a 274.5 passing yard prop line and a 1.5 touchdown prop line. Any of those intrigue you, or there are some other quarterbacks that you're looking at as some best bets for today?
Yeah, so for Kirk Cousins, I mean, I think starting there is fine. I think that the 1.5 passing touchdowns is, I think that's a solid one to go over on. We actually do have that projected as an over, and again, like, you know, a lot of the props on No House, some of them will be jacked up, and are you know, from the just to make, it's more of a strategy thing why they do it. In my opinion, I think it actually makes for some interesting decisions. But one of the strongest over projections that we have on our site is Kirk Cousins over the passing touchdowns. You mentioned the weak Giants secondary. They've been they were destroyed by TJ Hawkinson, but they're destroyed by wide receivers down the stretch as well. I think that's going to come to fruition. I just don't think they can get pressure the whole game and shut down this passing attack. So I like starting there. I think that the over on the yards is something you could consider. My worry is that maybe the Giants just don't do anything in this game. And like, I mean, it's their, you know, it's Dan Jones' first playoff game. You know, maybe we see like some nerves kind of like, you know, from Trevor Lawrence last night, but it never really, you know, the second half never happens. I could see that. So not that I want to trust Minnesota too much, but that's something to consider. Daniel Jones's passing yards in that game is really interesting. It's 240, and you know, we haven't projected as an under, and I think he's maybe only gone over this like once or twice this year. But man, like that, the Minnesota Vikings are going to give up some yards. I mean, I like for Daniel Jones not to hit this, the Giants need to get out in front, which could happen. You know, Saquon could you know, get them out in front, then they just run the ball. But I think there's a lot of scenarios where Jones does go over as well. So that's interesting. But I think my favorite from that game is the Kirk Cousins over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I don't mind pairing it with his yards over, but I think that the passing touchdown is actually a stronger play.
I like that one. And I'm glad you brought up Daniel Jones, because that's one of the more intriguing plays today. Personally, if I was going to choose one underdog to actually pull off an upset, it's the New York Giants today. And yes, let's be realists. If you look at just the quarterback on our NHA tool over at stochastic.com, the under on Daniel Jones 240.5 passing yards is the second highest probability prop line for any quarterback today. However, I think there's a case to be made if you want to get contrarian, maybe put him in the mid-tier, like a 5-pointer or a 4-pointer as an over here, because if things go right for the Giants, it's probably because Daniel Jones and company exploited that secondary. Yes, Saquon or Jones himself could have rushing ability, but I also think that they're playing a weak enough opponent, despite the win-loss record, that they actually have a solid chance here. So Daniel Jones over 240.5 passing yards is an interesting contrarian one, and going against our tools, not what I typically do. Obviously, we're sticking mostly with the stochastic tools. The one that kind of intrigues me is Joe Burrow sitting at 2.5 passing touchdowns. So he could have a huge game. He could have like 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and still get the under here. I think that is a really safe bet for like the 7-8 range if you're looking to put a quarterback there.
Yeah, complete agreement here. And you know, just to touch on the Jones, like we have it projected as like a 60 percentile play. So again, like, you know, it's not, we're not talking like 75, 80, like it's a little bit better than a coin flip, but it's not like a hugely projected under. So I think taking the over there is fine. Burrow's kind of the same thing. It's a little bit stronger play though. It's in the like 65 percentile range on the under the passing touchdowns. I agree with you. You know, like the Ravens are going to try and kill this clock, and they've been running the ball well. Like, I just don't know if there's going to be enough game, like snaps and dropbacks for Burrow to get there. I think you have to be really efficient. That could happen. Like this game, it could just be like 24-0, but I think that the under there is a strong play. That is the under there with, like, between him and Josh Allen. I'm much more willing to go under on Burrow. Josh Allen scares me today if I'm taking unders, if I'm being dead honest. I just feel it's the playoffs. Like, they're not going to pull him, right? Like I mean, you know, and this isn't the Chargers we're talking about. They're not going to get up 27-0 and not score any points. So yeah, the Burrow one makes sense. I just think that game's going to be close mostly. And you know, maybe the Bengals are just running out clock late and just trying to get that, you know, the game over with. But I agree. I think that's a strong under right there on Burrow.
And, you know, some of these interception props look kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly
Daniel Jones under for interceptions, kind of interesting. The ones that were kind of iffy, and you started there, I think Kirk Cousins, deciding what you want to do with Kirk Cousins. Does he actually have a ceiling performance in him against the 31st ranked coverage defense according to PFF and the Giants? I think you started there. I think people could start there, even though it's kind of mid-tier on the tools.
Yeah. Again, Kirk Cousins, you're right. I mean, maybe even taking like the under on a Kirk Cousins interception prop, like to be just to get yourself some originality. Cause maybe you make it a lower point play, but we do have Cousins projected as it's basically a coin flip for the interception prop. So it's not the strongest interception. We actually have, I think it's Burrow is like more like the stronger over on the INT props. So is Josh Allen, actually, although I'm not sure if I want to play Josh Allen over. But anyways, the Cousins one is interesting. Like both of the quarterbacks in this game, we have low probabilities for interceptions. And I think that's because they're going up against weak secondaries as part of it. So Cousins, again, I think like some people might look to some overs on Cousins, but I think that Daniel Jones's over may even be more popular. So if you're going over on Cousins, like passing touchdowns, maybe take the under on the interceptions, make that a little bit of a lower point play. But I think that would get you a low ownership prop, which is nice because, part of playing a nose advantage, you want to play for the top money and you want some originality in your lineup and you don't want to chop it with a million people. And I think like a prop like that could get you there. So.
Absolutely agree. And while I would love to spend all day breaking down these quarterback props, we already got to move on here to the wide receivers and tight ends. We got a ton of them for us. And look, I think it's pretty obvious where a lot of people are going to go. Unders for these big Miami players and anyone attached to whatever quarterback plays for Baltimore today. Things like Jalen Waddle under 5.5 receptions. Anything related to Sammy Watkins unders look really high probability in our tools right now. I mean, it's just really hard to trust the collective of Anthony Brown or Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson today.
Yeah. Okay. So again, this is where we get into like the strategy and like, you don't want to fancy play yourselves out of like really solid plays, obviously. So I don't want to try and talk people out of that. I mean, but we've got here as an example, like our top 4 props, two Jalen Waddle unders, receptions and yards, and then 2 Sammy Watkins unders, reception and yards. If you're going to pick one of them, there's no doubt that the guy I would rather pick is Sammy Watkins. The way Jalen Waddle plays, he could just, again, like we have a scenario where like we have a team could be down 35-0 for like a quarter and a half. And the Bills are just out there just, playing like it's the equivalent of pond hockey in football. And Jalen Waddle just catches like 5 short passes on a drive. I think that's a possibility. I don't think that scenario is at all likely with Baltimore. And even if they do, they'll probably run the ball anyways because they're Baltimore. So I think the Sammy Watkins unders is where I would start. Take at least one of them, put them high up, probably the receiving yards. And take that under. Just take that as like your lock play and move on. You can use Waddle as well, but again, I think that one is a little bit more. If you're going to go, Waddle's an interesting player. If you're going to go under on Waddle, I'd probably go under in the receptions. Mm-hmm. Never know when that 70-yard touchdown with a guy like that is coming. But they're both strong plays, obviously. And then, we get into a couple other guys like, Mark Andrews is there at 5.5 receptions. If Huntley plays, I would probably avoid the Andrews under if possible. If there's another strong play,
I like that call.
Projects out similar. Yeah, Mark Andrews, Tyler Huntley averaged 10 targets per game the last 4 games of last season. So like he does like throwing the ball to Mark Andrews. I would avoid it if Huntley plays. If Anthony Brown plays, you can absolutely go there, I think. But that's one I would just try and avoid. I don't think you need to be contrarian and get fancy and play the over because we have 34 props. But I wouldn't be necessarily heavy on the under either.
One of the intriguing unders that we have high up on our tools, and I like, just poking holes because obviously the stochastic tools, especially ones designed specifically for taking down NHA tournaments based on our simulations, the same data and tools teams working on all of the tools you know and love, the boom bust tool, the projections, the ownership projections, working on these tools as well. Gabriel Davis, under 4.5 receptions. He has not done that very often, but I almost wonder, with this weird spread, especially in the playoffs, that seems one where could Gabe Davis actually break break open a big game because they just focus so much on Stephon Diggs. It's not like Miami's secondary is good.
No.
And I realize, again, I'm talking about the fourth highest probability prop at all on the NHA tool today is the under on 4.5 receptions. But it's just one of those intriguing ones where you're kind of saying, do I really trust the game script, or do I know what the game script is going to be for Buffalo? Because I think they could just do whatever they want, which could mean 5 receptions for Davis. That seems like a stay away option for me. T. Higgins, though, he's sitting there right below him in the tool, under 5.5 receptions, even with the possibility the Bengals blow out the Ravens today. I kind of like that one a little bit better.
I'm in full agreement with you. Again, like Miami is basically a funnel to the pass kind of defense, 25th in defensive pass DVOA. The Ravens aren't great either, but Higgins is dealing with a Jamar Chase and even like a really like serious number 2 in like Tyler Boyd, excuse me. So yeah, Higgins, I think at 5.5, we've seen the target share for Jamar Chase just be insane towards the end of the year. It's kind of a similar situation with Davis, but yeah, the matchup for Davis just could be, it does feel like we could get like another crazy playoff run from him, where he got, obviously his ADP from the next year skyrocketed because of a couple big playoff games. Feels like that could happen again. Like legitimately, we're in the same spot. Everyone's going to be focusing in on Diggs. People are going to forget like Davis is just out there, really explosive player on the outside. So Davis would probably be a stay away from me. If I mixed him into an under, it would be as a lower point play. And I like the T. Higgins under a lot better. That's a big number. If the Bengals get in front again, you could just see them chew clock, and like they have so many other options to get involved. So I just don't see that the Bengals. It's a tough game to see the Bengals throwing 40 plus times, and you at least want that possibility and like a T. Higgins over on that number. And I just don't think that it's there. So yeah, I like the under there too, more on him.
And then if we are trying to play one of these receivers, tight ends from the Buffalo side, and you want to go over because you think that there's going to be a smash performance here, obviously you could go with Diggs. We're a little bit ho-hum on Diggs projections today, but Dawson Knox sitting at just 34.5 receiving yards. Now, I realize that if you look at the tools, the under looks a little bit higher probability, but I think Dawson Knox could play a huge factor in this game, especially if Miami tries to dial up a lot of blitzes, try to get Josh Allen off balance. He'll need to dump it down. I know he could go to the running backs, but I think Dawson Knox, who had a big game against this Miami team in the regular season, very, very modest 34.5 receiving yards. I could see myself going over there as well.
Yeah, had a really good game against Miami in the last time these two teams met. And this is, again, like the Bills, there's a little bit of injury news too. Like Isaiah McKenzie is questionable. So, you take a receiver out of the mix, and this helps Gabe Davis too, which is kind of like feeds into argument there. So I think Dawson Knox, we saw him get way more involved the last 5 or 6 games. I don't necessarily see why that would change. I mean, he's kind of a mismatch, especially in the red zone. Yeah, I mean, we only need 34 and a half yards. 34 and a half. So I don't mind it at all. I think it's a good match. I think it's good. Like, it'd be a lower point play. We have it projected more as a coin flip. Again, this isn't one that's strong either way, but yeah, I think leaning over there is where I would go as well. And if you want to get contrarian and you want to add like a Bills wide receiver, or like you're going over on Josh Allen, I think Knox is the guy that I would probably feel a little bit better about than Davis. Davis is a little bit riskier, I think. I mean, not a little bit. He's probably like quite a bit riskier, but they both have, they both have like legitimate upside here that they could hit this. And I think it's the right type of game with, the Bills potentially putting up so many yards and points. So
he only needs 4 receptions for the receptions over as well. I think Knox, either the yardage or receptions, might be my favorite over for any Bills player today. Rapid fire, favorite NHA wide receiver or tight end bet on the board today?
So that's a good question. So do we have KJ Osborne up here? No, we don't. Actually, so this is easy. My favorite over is going to be Richie James Jr. It's not just my favorite over, just my favorite bet. Richie James Jr. over the receptions. Again, he had like a 27% team target share last 4 games of the year. He's only got a 3.5 reception prop up. I think the game flow will be there. Really good matchup. Like the Vikings, not too bad on the outside of Patrick Peterson, but like the rest of their secondary is bad. I really like Richie James there. I think he's going to have a solid game for the Giants as well. So, yeah.
And People asking about Shakir in chat, not available in the pick'em contest, and they do change some bets up for the versus the house mode, but we're at least focused on this short show on trying to take down these big tournaments in the pick'em contest where Shakir is not available. I really like that Richie James call. We move right on to the running back position, and we got some studs available to us. We got Saquon Barkley. We got Dalvin Cook. We got Joe Mixon in a seriously good game script. What are we doing with the running back position? Do you have a favorite bet that sticks out, over or under?
So yeah, the running backs, like we had a couple bad matchups, obviously. Like, I mean, just in terms of like, defenses and what they do and what the sort of stats say. I mean, Mixon against Baltimore, it's interesting. Like, I'm not shocked that we have him projected as an over on the 50.5 line. He only put, like he didn't do anything last week, and it's a good Baltimore defensive line. But I mean, like the Bengals are projected as, 8-9 point favorites here. I mean, like it's over a touchdown. The game situation says, and I think this kind of leads to like why you want to take like some unders on the guy like T Higgins as well, that the Bengals are going to be ahead at, late in this game, and Mixon is going to be the guy and potentially getting like, 10 fourth quarter carries. And I think that scenario is quite likely with how bad the Baltimore Ravens offense is. So yeah, the over here, like, I mean, you don't want to take him in this matchup, but it's a low prop. And I think that the game flow more often than not gets him there. So I also just think like the Bengals could just come out and just be like, we're not messing around today. And like, this whole defensive line thing for the Ravens just goes up in smoke quickly. And the Bengals O-line ends up dominating. I could see that too. So I think there's multiple outs there with Mixon. And I think that the over there makes sense. It's not like my favorite play on the board, but I do think that over makes sense. I think you roll with the projections there. I think it's there for a reason. I also like the under on Devin Singletary though. And I probably like that almost as much or more. Again, Miami's rush defense is good. And again, we have like this is something we don't really have with Mixon, but we have, a legitimate committee like James Cook.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, if Josh Allen comes, maybe Singletary gets 30 yards in the first couple drives, and then Allen throws a couple touchdowns, but then the game's over. And the Bengals like, okay, let's just let James Cook take some carries and we'll just rest Singletary. That could happen. So I think that Singletary, the game flow could also be heavily in his favor, but like, I don't know how many carries he's going to get. I think that, the under on the rush yards there makes sense.
And, we've got a situation where what I like to do is we look at our projected stats, how many rushes are expected to go to these running backs, and then just give them a really cruddy efficiency number, like 3 yards per carry. And if we do that with Joe Mixon today, based on our projections, our usage projections for him, he hits 48 yards at just 3.0 yards per carry. So he needs just like an iota of efficiency or one big run and the rest at 3 yards per carry. And he's hitting that over. A player I'm kind of interested in as well. What about Dalvin Cook? I know the number is high at 74.5 rushing yards, but the Giants are bad. They're bad defensively. And I do actually think this game will be close, but they are the 4th worst rush defense grade according to PFF during the regular season. Now, their secondary is bad as well, but I almost wonder, Dalvin Cook, who, if you look at some of the advanced metrics like rush yards over or under expectation, did not have a good season, may have an opportunity to thrive here. If you want to fade somebody like Justin Jefferson, again, not totally, but on NHA and the top tier options, I think Dalvin Cook could be a really good option. Again, I don't like him as much as Mixon. I think that is my top. The over for Mixon's yards is the top running back bet on the board for me. But Dalvin Cook is another one. And if I'm going with another player to throw out, I think Saquon Barkley is absolutely fine today. I think that there could be much, much more offense even than the last time these two teams played at 27-24. Is that crazy to think?
No, absolutely not. I mean, these are two bad defenses. I mean, you look at the matchups. I mean, Saquon may actually have the worst matchup in the game, but it's not like it's terrible. It's not like you can't run against the Vikings. It's just that their rush defense is a little bit better. But Saquon is like the Giants run when they're behind. I mean, like they're not going to give up on Saquon Barkley unless the game gets like really out of hand. But I mean, I don't think that's going to happen against the Vikings. So Saquon, again, like he's not my favorite over, but I don't really a little bit. I'd be scared to take the under there. I think that if you're going to take the over on Dalvin Cook, you could think about maybe taking an under on Barkley, because I don't think the under on Barkley is going to be that popular. And I mean, like, he can get involved as, pass catchers and stuff too. So maybe picks up some big plays there, and then it just kills his rushing yards expectation or whatever. But I don't mind. Like, I think that this is a game where often we talk about like correlating, like, oh, okay, you take the over on a running back and under on a wide receiver. I'm kind of with you. I think you can just take overs on like a lot of players here, like Dalvin Cook over, maybe even just take the Jefferson over with them, or like the Cousins passing yard over, almost like we saw last night with the Jags. Like everybody, like Lawrence went over, Etienne went over. Like, I could see that happening, maybe even with both teams, if not just maybe just the Vikings. So I think so. It's not really a game I want to go to my way and like try and fade. So yeah, I like the overcall on Dalvin Cook. I agree. It's just such a good matchup. Little bit less bullish on Saquon, but like, again, not really a player. Like, if I'm going to fade Saquon on a no house advantage lineup, it would be as a lower point play, not as a higher one.
Totally agree. And don't worry, chat. I see you guys going, what's going on? We got the first look and the deeper dive and live before lock coming up right after this. Don't you worry. We're just getting you started with some ways to take down today's NHA slate. And that's it for us, guys. This 3-game Sunday slate over on NHA should be very, very exciting. Hopefully we gave you a good overview, a good starting point of how to take down these slates. Make sure to check out the NHA tool over at Stokastic.com, available with the NFL Plus package. You also get a $100, up to a $100 first match deposit bonus when you sign up for NHA using the link in the video description below. We're going to get out of here. Thank you very much to producer Jordan Klein. And of course, follow my co-host Geoff Ulrich over at The Fantasy Grind. My name is Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. We got the first look with Josh and Spags coming up next. Have a great Sunday, guys.
How we holding up out there, ladies and gents? You doing all right on this opening wildcard Saturday? Did you make it through the first game relatively unscathed? I got scathed. Oh, I took a nice scathing because that game, it did not play out the way that I anticipated. I, like most people, was thinking the Niners were going to get up early in the first half so that the second half was a basically kill the clock with the rushing attack offense, but credit to the Seahawks. They had a great first half, kept it close, which meant the Niners had to run their whole playbook going into the fourth quarter. McCaffrey was getting carries all the way to the end of the game. I did not foresee that. I did not anticipate that, which meant the opening game was a rough one for me. But maybe, we still got Herbert and the Chargers to clean up this Saturday before we get into these Sunday bets, which is why I'm here with you. I'm here to give you some of my favorite Sunday bets. There's a bet. It's guaranteed. You should know what it is. If you haven't taken advantage, there's no better time than NFL playoffs. DraftKings Sportsbook, you bet $5 on anything. You could have been wrong on a litany of those Niners bets. You took Deebo Samuel under 3.5 catches thinking they were going to preserve him. Oh, I lost that one. Doesn't matter. DraftKings Sportsbook would have credited your account with $200 in free bet credits. It's a great promotion. Check the specifics in the description of this video, and then there will be a link which will take you there if you are 21 plus, which is the gambling age in most states, so you better be that, okay? No fake IDs around here. And also, if you got a problem, all right, you're ticking in the middle of the night, you're one of these people who's sending me DMs, Andy, I need your Saturday snips for hockey, I can't go a day without it. We got a number for you to call. It's 1-800-GAMBLER. Pretty great number, like if you're in a problem. I wish things were like that. 1-800, I need a hot date tonight. But no, you get it. You got a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. They'll be able to help you out. There's some people who I'm sure know how to curb those bad habits. So looking at these Sunday games, I'm going to start with the Bills, and you're going to hear a lot of the same stuff from me you've been hearing these last 2 weeks. They're getting ready for those matchups, those Bengals matchups, those Chiefs matchups. Yes, this is going to be a game that they're probably going to win because they're 13-point favorites against a double backup quarterback, yes, but they know what looms in the distance. A potential shootout with Cincinnati and a potential shootout with Kansas City where they're going to have to wing the ball. I think you're getting Allen winging it, and I'm deferring back to essentially the same things you've been hearing from me. You saw multiple deep attempts last game. To Davis, Diggs, the both of them. I'm going right back to that stack of receivers. Give me the over on Diggs. Give me the over on Davis. Give me the over on Josh Allen passing yards. And give me the over on longest completion for Josh Allen. They're slinging it. They're winging it. They're getting ready for those high-scoring affairs. They're not going to try to trickle through this one like some of these games in the second half when the Bills played poorly. They know what they need to do to make a Super Bowl, and they better get that high octane offense back to early season form. And I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see the slang. They're slinging it around there in Buffalo. So give me that assortment of bets from the offensive players, along with just one little one on the other side. We got no Raheem Mostert, and it makes sense with me. Get your one final Jeff Wilson Jr. bet in there. Give me the over on his reception yards. So you got a third string quarterback in there. You think he's going to want to check it down? What if they do go up 3 touchdowns? All right, you take those underneath completions to Wilson and you hit that bet. Kind of like, honestly, this is
coffee. Hey, froze, Jordan. And we are live. Welcome to the NFL First Look Super Wild Card Weekend Edition. I think I got that right. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Chris Spags. We are brought to you by No House Advantage. 3 games today. Probably not going to be as interesting as the way that it ended yesterday, but one can hope. Be sure to hit that like button if you haven't done it already, to the 1,000 people that are in here right now. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Spags, what's up?
I will go one step further. You know, Josh is the like king around here, but I think we should threaten to do a FanDuel today where if we don't get to 300 likes, we're canceling the slate. The video goes down. Jordan gets to enjoy his day or go back to bed. I think we can only FanDuel it up as much as possible, Josh.
So I didn't know that any of that happened until I woke up. I was out all day yesterday. So
people are not happy.
Yeah, no, and people were not happy at all. They clearly didn't do it because of overlay. They are printing way too much money on the sportsbook side to care about an overlaid contest at this point. But man, bad look. Changing the title of a contest to "Do Not Enter." That's a new one. That one I've never seen before.
That's professional coding for you. You don't pull it down. You don't do any sort of blockage, any visual signing. You just go, "Do not enter," and people are going to, of course, enter it even more then because people can't help themselves.
That's the way that they would like rename files in like at my previous job, you know, in like a shared folder, like don't use this one anymore .xl. And like, it's like, just fucking delete it.
Yeah, save for my not porn video or folders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bunnies and kittens. What do you think of these games today, just in general? Are you excited to watch any of this stuff?
I mean, I love it. Like, I get excited about preseason football. I get excited about the worst of everything. So the best of everything's great. Like, I enjoyed the Week 18 slate. Thought that was a lot of fun. Some interesting games there. The tough part with these games is it's kind of like it was, I guess, yesterday in particular for the first game where Seattle puts up a fight. We know the Niners are much better. All the top markets in the world have the Niners as a huge favorite. You have 2 games like that today. The Bills, 87.4% chance to win outright, according to the top markets around the world. Bengals, 78.1% chance to win outright. The Ravens are going to do a dual QB thing, apparently, or the reports today. They're going to have Tyler Huntley and Anthony Brown out there. Neither of them have been good this year. So I think in that respect, like, it's probably not fun, but it's still football. The Giants-Minnesota game, I think, will be pretty live for an upset. Should be a competitive one if either way. And I think those are good games overall, but I'm just glad to have football. Glad to have super wild card weekend where they add a Monday Night Football game, and now we have to all deal with a new rebrand.
Oh, man. This is just, how great would today be if the 2 quarterbacks that you wanted to be healthy were healthy?
it would be more fun. I think the Miami game in particular, like, I just don't think Skylar Thompson has anything resembling the juice you need to keep it alive versus Buffalo. Like, he got out against the Jets in week 18 by the skin of his teeth. And I know people are like, oh, that he got a game winning drive, like that matters, but it doesn't against Buffalo. Like, Buffalo's a much better team in every single facet of the game right now. And then no Mostert too. Teddy Bridgewater will be the backup apparently, but he's banged up. It's just like the Dolphins to me feel like a team that probably would have been happy to not make the playoffs last week.
Yeah, it's just gross. It really is just absolutely gross. It is crazy to think, though, like, just based on the odds, there's basically like a 25% chance that one of those two big underdogs win today, or both in the aggregate, which is like very, very unlikely. But if you add it all together, like, that's not insignificant.
No, and I think that's what I do try to do every week, where it's, basically you're saying that, this is the probability. So if you want to get 20% shares that tell a story with your lineup, of course, we love telling stories with our lineup here. We're all natural orators. You want to tell a story with your lineup where, hey, maybe the Dolphins win. What does that look like? It's probably a big Tyreek game, probably Jeff Wilson also involved. I don't think you still need to take Skyler there. Same thing for the Ravens. You don't need to worry about QB at all because they're not going to be able to get a full snap share to really give you the upside. But you could take your Mark Andrews, you could take your Dobbins, who going to be over leveraged according to the boom bust tool. But there are ways to make it work if you want to play those probabilities, and you got to do something to get different on a slate where people are going to really be kind of locked in like a showdown, basically.
All right, let's hit this super chat from Sam first, and then we can get into breaking down all the positions. So Sam says, am I overthinking, or is this a good idea? I want to fade the Bengals players. Ravens defense has been great lately. I don't see Bengals scoring 20 plus. Yes, you are overthinking things.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens struggle against the deep ball. It's the one thing that happens with them. I think they have a 0.9 EPA on the year. I'll double check that numbers. On passes to 20 plus yards, Burrow, a guy who gets it downfield. There are some historical things which maybe he's referring to, like Burrow has struggled against the Ravens in the past because of the defenses they play. But it's still, you take the talent there, and the Ravens, I think the Ravens are happy to be in the playoffs. I think they kind of know what they have, and they'll try to win as best they can, obviously. But it's like Burrow and the Bengals are a team where it's setting up for Cincinnati Buffalo. That's the heavyweight title fight I think we're all looking forward to. That does, sometimes go the other way, but I just don't see the Ravens having enough here.
No, and look, the Bengals are 8.5-point favorites. The total is 40. They are projected to score more than 20 just right out of the gate, which means that scoring 30 plus is also not incredibly unlikely. So yeah, it's a 3-game slate. If you want to take that sort of stance on a 10-gamer or something like that, I think, you can make a case if you just want to get away from that. But to just 86 the Bengals as like offensive players today seems like that's going to be a tough sell for me.
Yeah, you could do anything in one or two lineups. Like, you're trying to win the $1 million, or you're trying to win, a play action or whatever. Like, you want to get different somewhere in some portion of your lineups. I think the ways to get different is to play less Giants based on the projections, to maybe be mindful of the Bills defense and instead go to like stacks and, maybe some Singletary or Cook action. But like, there's ways to get different that are more logical, I think, than trying to fade the Bengals. But you could do it. Like, I'm not going to, it's a short slate. You could do whatever you want and make the case for it. I think that's all sort of the magic of having a 3-gamer.
Yeah, if you're only playing one lineup, then you're going to be fading all sorts of stuff. Yes, by all means, fade the Bengals. Like, you can kind of take whatever stance you want to take and build around it. But I wouldn't just immediately think, if the thought process is, I don't think the Bengals are going to score 20 plus, like, you're going to be wrong more often than not, because that is not what the line says.
Yeah. And just looking at the Bengals, I mean, if you look at even their averages throughout the year, their Vegas totals throughout the year, not a lot of times they've come in under 20. Like, that just doesn't happen very often. Can it happen today? Sure. Like, they could probably score 16 today and do enough to get by in this game, just because the Ravens don't have a lot left. But I think still it's silly to kind of expect the lower outcome, or to expect it to be a higher probability outcome than to take the other more likely one that happens every single week.
All right. Are we ready to break this bad boy down?
Oh, I'm dying for it. I think, Josh, also, did you hear about the $1.4 million wager guy yesterday who bet $1.4 million? Yeah. Bet $1.4 million on the Chargers to win outright when they were in a big lead, to win $11,000, and he ended up losing that $1.4 million. So important to keep in mind today, guys, the value of expected value plus EV bets, DFS, and all that stuff. And that is a good reminder of it, that if you have $1 million, $1.5 million, it's not the way to spend it, I would say.
I just want to know if that person cares today.
Oh, they have to. I mean, you can't, like, if you're trying to grind for 11K, you must care about that 1.4 million. So it's just a terrible bet that you should never take in Millionaires.
Or you're not trying to grind anything. You just have a model that pops up and it's like, I should bet, 0.0, where I should bet whatever percentage of my bankroll on these odds because I think it's this much. Like, I could see it also just being like a throwaway bet in the weirdest way. I have no concept.
What a Kelly criterion that guy must have.
That's what I'm saying.
$4 million to win 11K.
What if, like, yeah, I don't know. What if it was a misclick and it was supposed to be, like 140,000? You don't notice it until like, it's just some sort of automated process. You never know.
Hilarious. Alex comes up on the next show and he's like, yeah, I thought it was a good bet. Thought it had the money.
Man. Oh yeah. That's just like, that one hurts my soul. And I would never want to make that bet, but I would just want to talk to that person for 2 minutes.
Probably a terrible conversation still.
If they're alive right now. Let's talk running backs. We'll start it off mostly on the DraftKings side. I will hit you guys with some FanDuel thoughts. I do have FanDuel lineups built as of right now. Biggest ownership piece for today is paying up at running back on DK. That is Saquon Barkley, just north of 40% ownership in our projections. Then we drop down to the next two most expensive guys, $7K Dalvin Cook, $6,800 Joe Mixon. They are both owned in the 30s. So based on what I see here, doesn't seem to be much of an issue with having to pay up for running back today. Let's lump those three guys together: Barkley, Cook, Mixon. How do you feel about them? Is there one guy that stands out more to you? Do you want to avoid anything there? Just sort of holistically, how do you see it?
I have no issue with Barkley. I mean, I think the main thing for me that stood out all year long is that he's been basically a league average back. Of course, my day job at Football Outsiders, doing all the stuff, keeping that afloat. We talk about DVOA a lot. Basically, literally like an average back in terms of DVOA numbers, where I think he's closer to the negative, but overall in the year, like he's like a 0.2% positive. Point being though, like he's a volume back, and volume backs have value and all that stuff. I think it's hard to imagine Saquon failing for the sake of tournaments, though, trying to target some upside. Like Jeff Wilson's going to get a lot of checkdowns. Skylar Thompson has really fed Raheem Mostert lately. Jeff Wilson going to absorb all that Mostert work with Mostert out. Also, Mostert involved in the red zone, so I think there's some ways for Wilson to be there. I think that's a pivot point. I think just really the main thing to me is like Saquon's a very good play, but people are going to basically lock him in. Doesn't mean he doesn't have the ceiling. Doesn't mean he doesn't have the floor there against the Vikings. Vikings not very good overall. But I think there are some ways where, let's say the Vikings get out early, you do see less Saquon then. Maybe we see Daniel Jones have to pass a little bit more. Then you get a stack for Jones going and you're getting different from the field. So I think Saquon to me is a good play, but one where he's probably the one I'll leverage off of the most based on those guys and the ownership that I would expect.
Okay. Yeah, as I look at it now, he is positively leveraged in the boom bust tool, but it is less than Dalvin Cook, less than Joe Mixon. Dalvin Cook in particular, 45% optimal rate, 35% ownership. Do you see that sort of the same way? Is that a guy that you're looking to be a little bit heavier on today?
I think so. And I think too, there's some narrative stuff with Cook that you can put where basically, the Vikings would save a lot of money cutting him in the offseason. So I think, maybe you just run him into the ground now, see what you can do with him, know that he's one of your upside guys. And then also that you don't have to worry about him getting injured, because if he does, great. If he runs hot, great. You could figure that out in the offseason too. So I think that kind of fits too. And he's also just natural leverage against Barkley. You can play both running backs from a game, especially on a short slate. But I do think there's sort of a natural pull there where if you're going Cook's way, you don't take Barkley, you're getting different from the field and hopefully getting some theoretical leverage there about the game script. So Cook makes a lot of sense to me. We know he could break big plays too. Like he kind of fits all the criteria here that I feel like Saquon's just a pure, you're expecting him to get 20 to 25 touches and, a handful of them to be within the 5-yard line, and he punches it in. And I think that could be more of a narrow outcome. Like we've seen a couple times, like week 17, Barkley doesn't get there. I think that's the kind of thing I worry about with Barkley, where I don't have that kind of same concern with Cook.
Okay. Anything else you want to touch on? Do you have any major thoughts on Joe Mixon? He's just to me, he's just a guy today. Like I think the ownership looks about right. I'm neutral to him on FanDuel as well. I just don't have much to say about Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I have no issue with Mixon. I think there's certainly worlds where he can punch in 2 touchdowns today. That wouldn't be a shocker. There is also the world too, where, the Bengals face a lot of long third downs. And you see more Samaje Perine out there, and he can really rack up PPR points and be direct leverage. We know he can score touchdowns. We know he does get red zone looks. So I think Mixon to me, less of a secure floor, less of a secure ceiling or a shot at a ceiling than a Saquon. So he might be third overall. I just think he's going to be less owned because of all the stuff I said. So I think Mixon's a nice tournament play to get to. But I think out of the big three guys, like Cook is probably my favorite. And then you mix in a Wilson or a Bills back, and that's, a pretty unique build.
You mix in Bills back. I see what you did there.
Yeah, that's of course the wordplay I'm known for at 10 in the morning. That's really right.
After that, we get another 3 guys in the 20% ownership range. That's going to be Devin Singletary, Jeff Wilson, and James Cook. We're getting Singletary with some pretty sizable negative leverage, Jeff Wilson with some positive leverage, James Cook relatively positive here. Jeff Wilson right now on the FanDuel side for me at 6K is causing major problems. I'm getting him in everything. I'm a little nervous about it. So I'm going to make you start there. Considering he is the fourth most optimal back on DraftKings as well. What do you want to do with Jeff Wilson today?
I think he's a really solid play. I mean, I think it's hard to argue when you do absorb two backs workloads into one where it has been a split backfield. And we've seen Jeff Wilson have the upside when he's been the hot hand in that Dolphins backfield and actually take some more carries away from Mostert when he was there. Now Mostert's not there. And I don't think it's really Savon Ahmed time, or I guess Myles Gaskin, if they could dust him off, whatever guys they put inactive as backups, like they're just not in the same tier of how Jeff Wilson's perceived in that offense. And again, Skylar Thompson can't get the ball downfield. So it's going to be a lot of checkdowns available. So PPR points wise, I think on FanDuel, I could see why you would try to move away a little bit, because you basically need him to get in the end zone a little bit more. You need the yardage to be there. On DraftKings, though, he could have 9 catches for 50 yards. Like I think that was close to what Mostert had a couple of weeks ago. And it wouldn't be a shocker. Like, and then you could add on a touchdown, you could add on 50 yards rushing, and like then he's exactly where you need to be on DraftKings. So I think he's a really solid play on DraftKings, frees up money to do whatever you want. And I think he can outscore Saquon in like the right world.
It's scaring me so much. I look at that game and I look at that line, and I'm like, okay, well, the Bills are set to smack the Dolphins. Should my most exposed play be the running back from the Dolphins? And in my mind, the answer is no. But if the game script is going the way that you are talking about, where he might just get there on volume of garbage passes, and maybe that's all it is, to just be better than the other guy, to be better than James Cook at 5,900 on FanDuel, to be better than Devin Singletary at 6,200 on FanDuel. He might just fall into that by accident, even though he doesn't necessarily have a great game. And, he could always just sneak into the end zone and have like the one Dolphins touchdown today too, at which point then you're feeling really good. But I've just... intuitively, it makes so little sense to me to want to go to him, knowing that they are in the least likely scenario to succeed. Like, you just don't normally want the running back in that spot. But I think he's unique today just because of the way that the roster is set up.
Yeah, it's just tough because Skylar Thompson can't get the ball downfield. And that's been how Miami's been all year. They pass above expectation, but Tua was hitting those throws. Like, Tua was at least giving Tyreek a chance to make those plays. Waddle can work a little more in the intermediate range, but like he's just not able to get open, and the timing isn't quite there with Skylar Thompson because he's not as accurate. So it's basically like, yeah, Skylar Thompson's just going to throw it to whatever is going to be open, or as open as can be. And that's probably going to be the running backs a lot. And like, honestly, Wilson can get there and be the highest scoring Dolphin just out of those checkdowns. And even if he doesn't really get yardage, like that's something that's a possibility too. So I think he's a great play. I think, again, better on DK than FanDuel though.
Okay. How do you want to sift through the ownership between the two Buffalo backs? Devin Singletary and James Cook are essentially projected for the same ownership. We're calling James Cook a better play from an optimal percentage than Singletary. Obviously, $700 more expensive. How do you split these two dudes?
So in DraftKings, the projected ownership right now, 21.3% for Singletary, 21.2% for Cook. So there's not really an advantage there. The price tag is a little bit cheaper for Cook. From what I saw in Best Ball, people seem more excited for Cook, even though Singletary had a higher ADP, like people would jump to try to get Cook. So my thought is that I do think there's a chance people may just take the salary savings and want to go the younger guy's way and go for Cook. Whereas Singletary, I think works and builds with Wilson. Obviously, I think it would be a little bit better if you didn't play Wilson, but it probably doesn't matter in a 3-gamer. And I think Singletary is the guy you probably would expect to get more work in a game where they're just trying to kind of salt it away. They know Singletary is not going to fumble, whereas Cook does get more pass game work, does seem to kind of fit where the Bills have to cobble together an offense and make it work. So I think Cook will actually be a little bit more high owned than we're giving credit for at Stochastic right now. And if he were 25 and Singletary's 15, like that's kind of meaningful. So I would probably go Singletary's way. I just think people are not as into him because he just didn't have a single ceiling game all season long, basically.
Right now, I basically don't have Singletary on the FanDuel side. He's 6,200. Cook on the opposite is 5,900. I am getting to Cook more than I'm getting to Singletary. I don't think I've gotten Singletary. I haven't gotten the Bills right all year, and I definitely haven't gotten Singletary right all year. So based on the numbers that I see, the little number next to Devin Singletary's name with the 5% ownership for me, highlighted in dark orange at this point, lets me know that everybody should be going to Devin Singletary.
It's just how it goes. It's like a 1-game sample, and obviously the projections, like the workload, how it's kind of been trending favor Cook, but it's just 1 game, and you can sort of get Singletary to break a big run that maybe Cook doesn't get. There's a lot of outs for Singletary to get there, and he's going to get the first shot. So if he's running hot, maybe you just see less Cook naturally. So I think if Cook's too easy to get there, that means everybody feels that way, and I think that's what does make Singletary a little more appealing as a result.
What do you want to do with anyone else at running back? J.K. Dobbins, we haven't really talked about. Alexander Madison, we haven't talked about. Ahmed, we haven't really talked about. Is there somebody else that you're looking at? Do you have like an unowned flyer today?
I mean, Dobbins, I would have thought was appealing, but he appears pretty over leveraged according to stochastic data, that negative 9% leverage on him, even though he's only going to be 17% owned. That said, 17% owned on this slate, I feel like it's kind of worth a shot. But Gus Edwards also going to be really unowned, and he does seem to be closer to, I guess, lower negative leverage. He's got a negative 5% leverage, 6% ownership. So maybe you can go Gus Edwards' way. But I think for the most part, I'm going to try to figure out how to get different in terms of the overall construction and just to kind of take what I get with a preference towards Dalvin Cook and Jeff Wilson, and then probably Devin Singletary a little bit. But I think, it's going to be one of the slates where you can't really get a big advantage at running back. Like you could play Ahmed, I guess, but that feels incredibly thin. And I don't know that I'd want to trust that.
That's the one that I look at where it's just everybody goes to Jeff Wilson and he scores like the vulture touchdown. And all of a sudden it like takes the value from Wilson away. And at 4K on DraftKings, maybe that's enough if the pay up option, like if something in that Justin Jefferson, like if Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Diggs, Hill, like if two of those guys have outliers and you need that salary, that's the only path that I really see to want to go that direction. I did not get to him at all on FanDuel. I'm light on Dobbins. I'm light on P. Ryan. That part I don't like at all. He's another guy that I don't feel like I ever get really correct. Right now, my big stands are Jeff Wilson and Dalvin Cook at running back. I don't love the Wilson piece, but I don't think that I could get away from it. He just looks better than everybody else around him. That's really as easy as it gets to me.
Is there a reason you're not going to Saquon more on FanDuel? Because it does feel like he would sort of be rewarded. Obviously, the salary, I'm sure, is a little bit of a gross point, but is that the main reason why?
I'm basically neutral to Saquon at this point. He's 8,800. I am paying up pretty sizably at wide receiver. I'm not really getting to Tyreek Hill. That should be no surprise. But Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, I'm either at the field or over the field on all three. So I am getting to just a little bit more salary spent at wideout in comparison to running back. And I think that's sort of, I don't want to say muting Saquon because he's 40% owned and that's what I have him at, but he doesn't show up. There was an opportunity for him to show up a little bit more in my lineups, but I do have him as slightly over-owned, and that's dinging him a bit.
Yeah, I agree. Look, and I think Saquon to me is just one of those guys that people like the casuals love him, the boomers love him, like everybody just going to kind of click him in if they're building lineups by hand. And that's something where the ownership can get out of hand. No pun intended, but like we saw that during the regular season where the casual plays, I think the ownership hasn't quite caught up with the casual plays and what they perceive as easy matchups. And I think from that respect, like, you could see Barkley be the highest esteemed, even with Wilson making a lot of sense and the logic of just absorbing two roles into one.
Anything else you want to touch on at running back for today?
No, I mean, I wouldn't really. I think with the Ahmed thing, the one thing I'd point out with that is it kind of feels to me like Eli Mitchell yesterday with McCaffrey, where like he took enough away from McCaffrey where McCaffrey didn't have the outlier day, but McCaffrey's still in the winning lineups. McCaffrey's the one that helped you cash. Eli Mitchell was kind of a galaxy brain thing that people went 20%. I think in the main DraftKings tournaments yesterday, maybe 25. Like that's a lot. Like, and people are now kind of doing that more where they're just trying to outthink themselves and they love these guys who could be a backup. I don't think that Savon Ahmed has the same steam as Mitchell, obviously, but he probably picks up a little more ownership than he should just for people trying to think. People are willing to play backup quarterbacks. They're willing to play the Dolphins' number 2 running back, I think, because people are batshit insane these days and trying to outthink everything.
All righty, folks, 1,500 people in the door right now, 218 likes. That's not going to get it done. I don't want Laffy to yell at me in 35 minutes. So hit that thumbs up if you can. Let's get that number up over 300. We do have the NFL Deeper Dive coming up next. You get Dave Loughran, you get Alex Baker, you get Ben Raza. They will be breaking down each game, taking, I don't know, put 20 minutes on each game. They're going to be able to put in a pretty sizable chunk of time. Then we kick it on over to NFL Live Before Lock at noon. Eric Lindquist, Matt Gajewski, taking you all the way up until 1 p.m. It does feel really nice to be doing this show at 10 o'clock right now. I can't lie. I'm very much enjoying this.
The 8 a.m. start kind of made it, or 8:45 to me, it just feels like 8 a.m. I'm just rounding down, but it feels like to me like that kept me a little more on edge. Where it's like now it's like casual, like we're having a nice casual talk, we're hitting our points, everything is kind of salient. But I feel like the 8:45 starts like, all right, there's still a little bit of like roughness here, and we ain't getting on some weird tangents. And I think today it's just all business with these games.
Agreed, folks. One last thing that I want to touch on for you. If you want to know what we have behind the paywall, we have 5 days free. If you have never signed up with us before, you get projections, ownership. We're talking about the boom bust tool as well. We've got the player compare tool. We've got our brand new lineup generator. I think you guys would find that fantastic if this was the first time that you're signing up, seeing what we have behind the paywall for that lineup generator, where if you're a 1 lineup person or maybe up to a 20 lineup person, if you're trying to get into a 20 max, you can use our lineup generator for that. Sift through lineups basically like you're on Tinder. If you don't like it, go to the next one. If you do like it, go ahead and swipe whatever direction you're supposed to swipe to say that you like it. I don't know. I never used those things. That happened after my time, but I assume most of you know what I'm talking about. We'll find out in a little bit, but that's what it's going to be like for you. That's the way that you can choose your lineups. It's not going to be like a typical optimizer. We have already generated the lineups and gotten rid of the stuff that we think is garbage so that you can just look at what we think is the best thing for you. So go check it out. Again, 5 days free. Link in the description. Which way do you swipe if it's positive?
It's right. You swipe right, you swipe left if you don't like something. There's a lot of concepts I'm applying, Josh, for an app that I'm building as well, which I think we are aligned on. But I think the swipe right is universal now, is good. Swipe left is like you're doing the inverse of whatever that would be.
Gotcha. Yeah, I met my wife before those things happened, so I've never had one of those on my phone in my entire life.
You missed out. It was a good time. I had a good run on all the apps. It was very early on the Tinder boat, was on the Hinge boat. The League boat is actually where I met my partner Alex, and that's where we started things off in LA. So lots of great apps out there, but it's a volume game, much like DFS. You got to get a lot of lineups in.
The League, that was the name of it?
Yeah, it was like theoretically a higher caliber one. And actually met some good people on there, but also some absolute lunatics. So it's the same as everything else. But it was more like, it was like Hinge before Hinge kind of blew up and hit the mainstream. It was a good app. It was, they're all good apps, if you get something out of it,
I legitimately I don't think I even knew what Hinge was.
Oh, Hinge is the big one now because it's like I think people have gravitated there. From what I understand from the internet now, my days are now long gone. But yeah, people love Hinge. You get to embrace personality. You get to put little personality prompts. You get to answer questions, Josh. I'm sure all things you would love to do in your dating days.
Yeah. No interest whatsoever in any of that nonsense. It would have been miserable for me. All right, let's talk wideouts, because this is where I think everybody's bread gets buttered today. Paying up on DraftKings, you've got basically 4 guys. It's Justin Jefferson, it's Jamar Chase, it's Tyreek Hill, it's Stephon Diggs. On another day, I think that this would be very flat. No one is really getting to Tyreek Hill. So that's the guy that I actually want to start with here. Can you justify it? Do you like him? Do you think they try to involve him more by just getting the ball in his hands faster, not necessarily in any sort of deep route scenario? Could he be something that they use at least a little bit in the backfield just to make sure that you get your best guy to have the ball and give yourself a shot? What do we want to do with Tyreek Hill on a day like today?
I think he's worth the tournament flyers. I think it's certainly a player that we know the upside of. We know that everybody's down on him. The issue is you look at the advanced analytics stuff, and something that I've talked about a lot on my show Splash Play, where I've been, trying to combine sort of what we talk about day to day with Football Outsiders with the fantasy stuff. Backup quarterbacks, the reason a lot of them become backups, especially third stringers, they can't get the ball outside and they can't get the ball anywhere besides between the hash marks. And that's something with Skylar Thompson where he's shown no ability to do much more than that. So for Tyreek, you're expecting him to get the ball in those kind of spaces, but the Bills D tackles pretty hard. They get to where they need to be. They do all that stuff that you're supposed to do. So I don't know if the gimmicks will kind of work there. Maybe in PPR points he can get there, but you talk about Justin Jefferson being in a great spot, Chase being in a good spot, Diggs being in a really good spot. These guys are all in great spots, and Tyreek, you kind of have to squint your eyes and really talk yourself into it. That's what makes him a good tournament play, but that's what also makes you likely to lose money in him a good portion of the time. So I would take him in those, probabilities like we were talking about, where there's a 15% chance they win outright. And there's probably, another 10% on top of that you would think he has a really good game as a bring back for Buffalo. That's one way to get unique too. So I think he's a good tournament lever, but projection wise, you're going to have to really dig deep into your lineup crunches to get anything with Tyreek, I would think.
Yeah, I obviously do not have a ton as of right now. When you look at Jefferson, Chase, Diggs, what stands out, or do those 3 guys just look identical to you?
I think they're pretty close to identical if you just go off the projections. I would say with Jefferson, the one thing that a lot of the football heads have talked about throughout the week is that the Giants don't like doing bracket coverage has been the one thing that teams have done to stop Justin Jefferson, and also the Giants blitz at a 40% rate. So basically if the Giants blitz and then don't get home, Jefferson's going to get open downfield, and it could take 1-2 plays for that to be over. So that'd be my worry with Jefferson, is that, this is a game they have to win. Jefferson's been down a little bit, but we know what the ceiling is. We know what the upside is and it's a matchup where he went nuts against the Giants Giants last time. So I would expect Jefferson to kind of be appropriately represented, but also be worth whatever the ownership ends up being. Chase and Diggs, though, like you can play both of them with that savings probably, especially if you do pay down a running back. So I think that has some appeal where you can kind of two like high upside players. If they give you 30 and Jefferson gives you 35, you've basically now beaten a large portion of that Jefferson field. And I think that feels pretty good. So I don't hate the idea of just going Chase and Diggs, but Jefferson is definitely going to be worth whatever ownership he gets.
Right now, FanDuel side, I guess I could say I'm most over the field on Chase, but I think that's just basically because he's also the lowest projected owned guy. I'm getting they're in 35 to 40% of my lineups across the board, with Tyreek Hill being sub 10%. I kind of think the field is just sort of right here. I don't have a guy that I really just want to get more than the others. I think the pricing looks correct. They're just really, really good options. And for Jefferson, he's got a real quarterback throwing to him. For Jamar Chase, he's got a real quarterback throwing to him. And for Stephon Diggs, he's got a real quarterback throwing to him. I just want to get to the guys that have the real quarterbacks throwing to them today. It just seems a little bit easier. Maybe we're oversimplifying it there.
No, I think it's a fair point. You know, the one that you can poke holes in is that the Giants, if they do get pressure on Kirk Cousins, like Kirk Cousins can absolutely fall apart and be that guy that we saw against Green Bay. And that was certainly an ugly situation for him. But Giants are basically a league average defense. So I kind of expect Cousins to get what's there. The one thing I would point out, though, ownership wise, like you look at the ownership for Jefferson, James, and Isaiah Hodgins, I would bet there's a lot of combined ownership for Jefferson with one of James and Hodgins. So maybe take Slayton instead, get that ownership down, similar price point. I think that's how you think about Jefferson more so. It's like, don't fade him, but if you play Jefferson, like do X, Y, and Z to try to get different somewhere else in your lineup.
My fades are very different for the Giants because I am massively under the field on Hodgins, James, and Slayton. So I hope the Giants just outright suck.
Oh, I don't think so. I think they're going to win this one.
I hope you are wildly incorrect because that won't be good for me unless it's the Saquon show, at which point I'll be fine. Or I guess if it's the Daniel Bellinger show, I'll be okay. But we'll save that for the tight end breakdown because I know everybody's going to want that one more than anything. Let's work our way down now at wide receiver because there's not a lot of interest in talking about the guys that are obviously exceptional. So I'm just going to open this fully up to you now. Who is the best Big Four wide receiver for today? Who's the guy that you expect to be on the most?
I mean, do we want to take some stabs at Gabe Davis? Because I think it's kind of time to consider that too. Under 5K, he saw 10 targets last game, which is the same amount as Diggs. Obviously didn't have the same success, but we're trying to win tournaments here. We know Gabe has a ceiling. I kind of worry that people will go, oh, playoff Gabe Davis like he did it last year. That's where he had the outlier day that he went absolutely nuts. That kind of steamed him up all year long. But I think Gabe Davis is still live in this spot to be a guy where the attention goes Diggs' way. Diggs doesn't get there, Gabe Davis get there, or they both can get there. And I think that's going to be a build that's more unique than it probably should be. A double stack with Josh Allen, with Diggs and Gabe Davis. Like that should be highly owned, and I don't think it will be. So that's one play that I like a lot. Besides him, Slayton, I think is pretty interesting because he can get there in 1, 2, 3 plays and doesn't need the PPR points James and Hodgins do in that Giants offense. But I think to me, those are the two that really stand out. Is like they're cheap. We know they have real ceilings there, and people just won't be on them that much. You're going to be with a quarter of the field, and if those guys go off, like, can you beat that quarter of the field? I think that's a pretty good shot.
The DraftKings salaries at wideout today are wild. There is a $1,700 gap between T. Higgins and Gabe Davis. You don't normally see that sort of chasm of just creating like two very distinct sections of wide receivers, because then you just end up with a ton of value, whether that's Isaiah McKenzie. You mentioned Richie James earlier at 3,900 on a slate like today. I think that's, there's a reason you're seeing 37% ownership coming into Richie James. He's just not priced correctly.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, James, I get it. I've been more of a Hodgins guy because I think it's weird. Like they both have had like legit ceilings this year, and James too has been good on previous teams. So I think the Niners, he had some like massive games as well. So like they both have legit ceilings, and I think Slayton does too. That's why I think the Giants, to me, like, can you get a double stack of Giants here? Can you fade Saquon and get a double stack of Giants? I think that's one way they win. I think that's one way they lose too, but keep it competitive. And I like that idea more because I think people will be happy to take one-offs here, or they'll take two uncorrelated without Jones. And if you can get that giant stack, I think it's pretty live today.
Who's your least favorite wide receiver out there for today? I mean, like in terms of guys that are rosterable, like please don't tell me somebody that you don't expect to play.
It's always Adam Thielen. Like, I don't know why he's where he is anymore. Like, he's not priced like he's Adam Thielen of the past. I get it. But I think he's another of those guys. People just know the name. People are like, he's a touchdown machine. He's going to get one. Maybe he does get a touchdown today. I'd rather have KJ Osborne at this point. Like, I think Osborne's shown more upside. Osborne looks like Justin Jefferson. If you watch the games, like, and you really see him out there, like, he's moving the same way. Like, he's got absolute all the juice in the world. So I think those are guys. And then Hawkinson too at tight end. Like, we like Cook. So we already established that. We think Jefferson is upside. We think Osborne's good. We think Hawkinson's good. So somebody's got to give there. And I think Thielen will be, we have him at 18% or 19% ownership. He probably gets 25 just because people are like, oh, Adam Thielen, that guy just punches it in time out. And it's not going to happen.
Okay. I don't have a ton of Adam Thielen, so that doesn't bother me too much. I'm all right with it. No issues here. Anything else we need to touch on here at wide receiver? I find it to be a pretty difficult spot to talk about. And with me having a pretty sizable Giants wide receivers fade, that is sort of just where I'm at for today. I don't love it. I assume one of those guys is going to hurt me pretty bad, but right now this is the build. So it's not like I can't pick one of them. That's that much I know. Whether that's Slayton. I have more James than I have Hodgins and then I have Slayton, but not by much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And also pointing out too, McKenzie questionable right now. I don't know if that news came down over the course of the show, but if he's not playing, he's already been losing some snaps to Khalil Shakir. So Khalil Shakir could be out there more. He's super cheap. And I think it's just worth pointing out the low owned guys, just because like I know I'll get some of these guys in my lineups just because I'm going to filter based on like having, X amount of guys under 20% owned. Like Jalen Waddle's projected for under 10%. Like he has some theoretical upside and he is a little bit easier for Skylar Thompson to get the ball to because he's not going to be all the way downfield. He'll kind of be in that intermediate range. I think that's an upside play. And Demarcus Robinson too, I would just plant a flag for. Like Anthony Brown. It's going to be a split game at QB apparently. Anthony Brown threw 45 times last week or 44 times. I'm like, that's upside for somebody there. He wasn't very accurate, turned the ball over, missed guys by 10 yards, but he did throw it 44 times. And that's something if he does, that amount in this whatever place he's going to get today, you could see Robinson get there and he's not going to be that highly owned and he has out a ceiling.
Move that over to tight end now, which should be a relatively quick conversation. And before we get to tight end, I do want you guys to hit that like button once again. We're up to a little over 1,600 people in here right now. I think 400 is in our sights by the time we finish the tight end spot. So if you are one of the 1,300 people that haven't hit the like button yet, just hit it. It's so simple to do so. I promise you. It's either right on your phone or right in your browser. One click, one tap, whatever you need. Tight end stinks. It's ultra atrocious on FanDuel, where basically everybody of relevance is like 20 to 25% owned. On the DraftKings side, you do get a little bit more ownership coming into Hawkinson. He got to 31%, but you've got Mark Andrews in the 20s, Dawson Knox in the 20s, Hayden Hurst in the 20s, Daniel Bellinger knocking on the door of the 20s. When you look at tight end, do you even care? Or do you just want to jam in Daniel Bellinger because he's got 11% positive leverage?
I care a little bit. So Daniel Bellinger on DraftKings seems like he's going to pick up okay ownership because of the price tag and the projection. Like in my optimal crunch that I ran before the show, he was kind of up at 48% of lineups. And then, Hayden Hurst is an 84%. So I think two tight end builds will be pretty on the menu as well. But I think Bellinger is going to be, decently represented here. I worry about Hawkinson being the guy that people fall ass backwards into. And this is something I think we've talked about in some of these shows where it's like, okay, this guy has all the advanced analytics reasons to love him. Like Hawkinson's going against a 31st ranked Giants defense against tight end. And it's like, people are going to fall backwards into that because of DVP stuff or just there's nobody else to play. And I think that's what I worry about. Like, I think you got to be holding hands with the field on Hawkinson too, to make sure that you don't get jumped. But he's a player that I think is in a good spot and also give you some leverage against Jefferson if you want to try that. But I think it's just take whoever you get and just be mindful of the fact that if you're getting too much of one guy, just start to carve that down and don't be a Bellinger, a slave to Bellinger. Don't be a slave to Dawson Knox, to even Mark Andrews, like especially Mark Andrews maybe. But I think just try to cut the ownership as much as possible.
Yeah, this is just salary for me. I've got the inverse of the salary. Like it's the most exposed guy for me on FanDuel is Bellinger at 4,800. My second most guy is Hurst at 51. Then I work my way back to Knox, to Andrews, to Hawkinson being my lowest exposed guy, about half the field. Got about 11% now because I just look at it and think, well, I could either pay down at tight end and get Stephon Diggs or Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, or I can get to TJ Hawkinson and then pay down for Demarcus Robinson. Like, I just don't feel as good doing it in the inverse. So right now, I am just sort of punting the tight end position. Although I will say Daniel Bellinger, based on our data, does look really good. It does show up as an under-owned guy. So that helps me in this scenario, especially if I'm not going to be getting too much from the Giants passing game to get to Barkley plus Bellinger. Like, I am taking a chunk of the Giants. It just so happens it's not the wide receivers. If I didn't have Bellinger either, I would be very nervous about the stand on the Giants, but now I just have to cross my fingers and hope he falls in the end zone. Because if he scores a touchdown, yay. Like, that is, you're trying to get the touchdowns right. Like, if there's one touchdown that goes to a tight end today, you're going to feel really good if that's the guy that you have.
Oh, I agree. And I think too, because of the ownership that we talked about, going to James, going to Hodgins, like those guys would be pretty highly owned. And Slayton, was the lesser owned of the three, or the least owned out of the three, but was still pretty okay owned. So I think going to Bellinger, like, you're getting natural leverage. You're trying to target the market on those touchdowns. And there's a world too where Bellinger gets 2 today, and then that's the day, and there aren't any more. And then Saquon gets the rest, or Daniel Jones. Like, you could do a single stack with Daniel Jones and Bellinger, and I think that's got credibility. And, again, everything's on the table today, but I think that one's a more logical take than some of the other ones you could talk yourself into.
Is there anything else that we could even say about tight end? It's just really bleak.
Maybe Irv Smith gets like a touchdown because he's back in the mix. They want him to feel good. I don't know, but like, that's the thing too, where he gets the same matchup that Hockenson will have, and he's going to be much less owned. Obviously, a lot lower upside because we've seen Hockenson get that number 1 role and really lock it down with the way he's played. But he's there, and Mike Gesicki too. Like, he's not owned, and again, like, they have to score somehow. They have to throw somebody in the intermediate range, so Gesicki could be that guy. But yeah, like, I think trying to take more of the guys that are projected well is probably the better play, and then just know that I think there's going to be a lot of Hurst lineups out there too, just based on the data that I'm seeing from Stokastic.
Well, folks, we are up to basically 400 likes, so thank you for that. Perfect opportunity for us to talk a little bit about No House Advantage. They are the sponsor of this show. There's a link in the description of the video. If you click that link, head on over to No House Advantage, make a deposit. They will match that deposit up to $100. Can't really find better deals out there. You put in 100, you get another 100. You're starting off $200 bankroll. That's going to get you 13 entries into the NFL 30K Sunday wildcard contest, 15K to first. It is only 18% filled at this point in time, so you may see a little bit of overlay. The key piece here is you're picking player props. You're taking over-unders for these players, and that's a lot to look at, even on a 3-game NFL slate. Luckily for you, we have the Stokastic No House Advantage projections available to you on our website. Every prop that exists with a percentage chance to go over, with a percentage chance to go under, that'll help you out. That'll save you some time. You could look at our best plays, start to build out the lineup that you want, because you're putting your favorite prop in the top spot. You're ranking them on a confidence interval. So, the first one's going to be worth 10 points. Your second one's going to be worth 9. You work your way down. If you want to save yourself even more time, my personal recommendation would be to go to our No House Advantage Optimal Lineups page, where we've done the work for you. We've taken the projections, we've taken our rates and what we found to be the best props, and we have already created the lineup so that you can just take them from the website and load them in to No House Advantage. It's not going to get much easier than that. We're talking basically a free $100, couple extra entries into that Sunday wildcard, and you're going to have like a really nice shot at $15,000 when all is said and done. Go check it out, everybody. Again, link in the description. Perfect opportunity to build a bankroll on the DFS side. You want to take advantage of deals like this, especially when we're doing the work for you at stokastic.com. All righty. Well, we're getting to the times where we're talking about things that I find less interesting than even tight end. We got to go to quarterbacks, and boy, oh boy, is this a tale of different talent levels. I'm just going to throw it to you right now. Where are you expecting to be most today? Is that going to be Tyler Huntley?
Yeah,
I couldn't even say it.
A QB who stinks in a split QB timeshare, you got to be there time and time again. I would say I would cut out Huntley. I would cut out Anthony Brown. I'd probably cut out Skylar Thompson from my lineups. I just don't think the 1.6% chance of optimal rate is the highest there. And I think there are other ways to go. Josh Allen's the favorite. He kind of has to be. Like, I don't see how you could go any other way. I do think that there's certainly reason to not go crazy about Josh Allen. Like, I think people are talking in the chat about Justin Jefferson. I'm like, oh, you got to get to 68% of him to get above the field. And it's like, and at that point, you might as well lock him in with somebody I just saw typing that. I don't think that's the way you play these slates overall. Like, I think you got to embrace sort of the different outcomes. Like, I got lucky yesterday that I got Brock Purdy only in the Millie Maker lineups I did. So that made me positive on the day. Got killed in the play action, got killed in the first down because that's where I was playing the Trevor Lawrences, the Justin Herberts. Didn't quite have that full configuration there. And Purdy went nuts. And I think that's sort of what any of these slates are. So Josh Allen, to me, the best play on the board. That said, you should be getting him. You should be getting Jones. You should be getting Burrow. You should be getting Cousins because all those guys have similar upsides, similar ceilings. And then obviously they'll take different pass catchers with them who could have the actual tournament winning ceiling.
Yeah, right now I've got a pretty sizable chunk of Josh Allen on the FanDuel, and my second most exposed guy is going to be Joe Burrow. I don't mind that at all, but I really don't I really don't have a big issue with any of the four guys that are real. And then I don't want any part of anything coming out of Miami. I don't want any part of anything coming out of Baltimore.
Yeah, I think that's the way to handle it. Like, I mean, ultimately, these guys are all really good plays. I guess the one that I would say intrigues me the most relative to the matchup and the fact the Vikings just aren't good. Daniel Jones, I think, is pretty interesting because he really did kind of figure out the Vikings defense. We have like a premium article on FO, which, you know, if you want to get it, go footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. It's a good one. But we have a guy who breaks down game film and then talks about like the real life machinations that could affect betting and fantasy markets. And then the Giants basically, you know, saw a lot of 5-man pressure, 6-man pressure from the Vikings the last time they played. And by the end of that game, Daniel Jones figured it out, was carving them up and making it work and obviously doing all the things that he can do. I think there's going to be even more of that. I also think that, frankly, Dable's a better coach in terms of getting his talent there. O'Connell's a pretty good offensive coach, but I think Daniel Jones, to me, like we've seen the upside recently. He was almost a tournament winner in best ball in week 17. And I think here it's going to be, they rely on him a lot. And he's also a natural lever against Barkley. He can run in touchdowns, and that's a pretty great thing to have too.
Yeah, his threat on the ground is really interesting because now in the playoffs, you're going to be a little bit more likely to make that break. You're going to be a little bit more likely to sell out for the yardage. You know, if it's week 14 or whatever, maybe you're not making that push as much and you're looking for the edge. But in a playoff game, like when you got to do it, I would not be surprised to see him making breaks for himself. So I do like his upside on the ground. Unfortunately, I am not getting to as much of Daniel Jones as I am on the field. I don't love that, and I'm hoping that changes, honestly, by the time that I get to 1 o'clock. But right now, the stand for me is Josh Allen. I assume that's not all that surprising. But
no, I mean, yeah,
I don't,
he's good. Yeah, he's a better Daniel Jones.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Do you expect to have any shares of the garbage?
No. I think to me, like Burrow is like the one I'm more interested in. Like I honestly might do pretty close to like 30, and then maybe 10 Cousins, because I think people will get to Cousins a little bit more. But that's sort of me just talking. I haven't built the lineups yet. I'll build them during the deeper dive and live before lock. That's always, I like to hear those guys' thoughts and then really start to cement things in. But I think to me, like Burrow is live. Like I love Burrow. I think the narrative stuff, people probably saw the articles throughout the week about Burrow being bad against the Ravens and all that. That's probably why that guy was like, oh, they're going to score under 20 points. I think Burrow's got the ceiling of anybody. Like he's my favorite playoff best ball QB. He's the one that I'm writing a lot of besides my boy Brock Purdy. So I think Burrow's got all the upside in the world every single week. And I think too, chip on his shoulder, like the Bengals do want to really put it down here and go face Buffalo because they are very aggrieved about how this whole situation got handled. And next week they're gonna have to go to Buffalo, and they probably shouldn't have had to if week 17 worked out their way.
That'll be wild.
That's a great game, man. I'm so these playoffs, like that's why Josh, like when you're like, oh, like these games kind of stink. It's like, yeah, but it's like it's the appetizer. Like you're getting yourself worked up. You're watching Chop before you make a delivery on DoorDash. Like that's the kind of thing where we're getting the foreplay going now, and you got to get these guys into place. And then next week, all the good tickles for those games.
Yeah, but the problem here is that we're going to get an appetizer, and then all of a sudden they're going to come back to us 15 minutes from now and be like, oh, by the way, we're out of salmon and we don't have your entree any longer.
So you think the Ravens are going to win on the back of Anthony Brown and Snoop Huntley?
I mean, the world's dumb, man. This kind of stuff happens all the time.
You're right.
I don't trust anything any longer.
I
didn't exactly think the Jags were coming back yesterday.
See, I thought that was in play. Like I felt like that was kind of a thing. I also thought the Jags were going to win, so I'm certainly predisposed. One thing that was a red flag for the Bengals for me, and every week, like I go through the top probabilities for each game just to see how the alternate spreads of the from the best markets out there, kind of what they're viewing. And one of the things that came up was that Bengals plus 3.5, which I always think is like there's a chance they could blow this game hedge. Like when the markets are betting on that heavily, it's like, oh, there's a world where the Bengals could lose by a field goal. That was one that was there in that Chargers game yesterday for their side. It's there pretty much every time a team blows a game where there isn't a high expectation of them blowing that game. So like there's a world where the Bengals blow this one. I just don't want to live in that world, Josh. And quite frankly, not in a threatening way, but like, just I don't want to be in that world.
I hear you. We're going to move it over now to defense. The most thrilling thing to talk about on one of these slates. Defense in fantasy will be the reason that some people win staggering amounts of money today. 25% ownership going to the Bengals and the Bills, and then basically everything left for the other four teams is split pretty evenly. Do you have a lean here? We have some pretty crazy negative leverage on the Vikings and on the Giants. We have some pretty crazy positive leverage on the Bills D right now. What do you see here? Because we do have two teams that basically have non-functional offenses for today.
I think so. We have positive leverage on the Bills right now, but the expectation is that they'll be 25% owned. I don't think they're going to be 25% owned. I think it's going to be closer to where the Niners were yesterday. Niners were 50% owned in terms of their defense, and Geno's been good. And that was where it was. Obviously it's 2 game slate. That's going to be different, but I think it's closer to a third going Bills, a third going Bengals, and then everything else. And I'm willing to take Dolphins, Ravens, Giants, Vikings. You should be willing to play them against your players, all that stuff, because the field's going to be congregated in one spot and defense is stupid and weird things happen and kickoff returns happen and all that stuff can be weird. And, the Bills got their kickoff returns last week for DeMar Hamlin. So now there's no more left for him. So somebody else has to get him. But I think it's foolish. So. Yeah. I think the Dolphins, Ravens, Giants, Vikings, take more of those guys and be happy with it.
Those Bills kick returns were garbage. I hated seeing it.
They were great, emotional, feel-good story stuff.
Yeah. I got a buddy that's a Bills fan that was actually at the game. So I was like, oh, that's a decent start, huh?
I wouldn't be I guess those are fun to see, but then you don't get to see your offense do a drive. And then it happens twice. It's fun to see it live, but the second time it'd be well, now we're just not seeing Josh Allen. That's who we paid the tickets for.
True. But you can just go eat some buffalo wings. You'll be fine. Yeah, right now, the Baltimore Ravens are my most exposed defense on the FanDuel, and Dolphins and Giants are 2-3. It's like tight end. I'm paying all the way down. I have minimal amounts of Bills and Bengals. I just have to pray that they don't score touchdowns. That's really what we're talking about here. Can you avoid who scores the touchdown if there's a touchdown? If there's no touchdown, then for the most part, this probably won't matter, and you'll want to be paying down. If one of those two teams get a touchdown, though, that they're basically locked in for best spot. So weird. I hate it so much.
I like, though, that they're at least both 3,300 plus. So that if you're eating up all your salary and you're going to a cheaper defense, at least that's a lineup then those people can't get to. I think that makes some sense on DraftKings. I don't know if it's the same on FanDuel, but I think the math works for how this works overall.
I think it's even more dramatic on FanDuel. Bills D's 5K, Dolphins D 3,200.
Yeah. It only takes one touchdown. The Dolphins are going to know defensively, they know they have Skylar Thompson at QB, so they know they got to get a turnover somewhere. Can they do that? I don't know, but it's Josh Allen.
Does Tyreek return punts or something today?
That's not crazy. Maybe you could double dip. I don't know. I'm never a big fan of double dipping, but it kind of makes sense. Maybe.
I mean, that's what if my only chance is to fluke fall into some weird shit because we don't have Tua any longer, then I'm making Tyreek Hill return every punt and hoping that he can break one. Win it somehow.
Yeah, I think your game plan for Tyreek would be he's returning everything, and also he's getting 10 targets at 1 yard, 1 yard A dot, and just hope he can break something. And honestly, that might be a game plan. That's their only shot to win this game.
Any other major defensive thoughts that you want to put in? Just the real thrilling stuff.
No, I mean, I think really the main thing that jumped out to me from running the optimal was that I do think there's going to be a lot of Bills defense played. And I think too, there's not going to be as many natural Bills 3-man stacks as there should be, because people are going to be putting the Bills D in. So they'll get to 4 instead. And I think trying to get to 3 Bills overall would be what I would try to push towards, just based on how I think these kind of build. And it's something too, where I think a 3-game slate has a lot of showdown components to it. I know our guy, Neil Orfield, does a great job breaking that down, but if people are going to build in one certain way, try to build differently from that. And I think high ownership for the Bills, high ownership for the Giants value guys, those are going to be the optimizer plays that people are going to come up with. So as long as you know those two things, you can find ways to get different around that.
Well, we've got basically 1 or 2 minutes before we're going to kick this one over to the deeper dive crew. We're up to 447 likes, 2,000 people. Hit that thumbs up so we can hit the 500 mark. That'll shut Laffy up. I don't got to worry about anything after that. I'm going to hit you with the final question. What's the team that you want to stack the most today? Who is your top stack for today?
I mean, I think obviously the obvious one is the Bills. So like, let's just say that. But I think the Giants to me seem like the most fun because I think people will take one-off pieces of them, but not get the full thing there. And, as a result, like I think a Daniel Jones stack where you expect him to be a passer and a runner, I think gives you pretty big upside potentially. And I think that game has some potential to shoot out. So I'm a big fan of the Giants overall. And again, I think they win outright. So if they're playing from behind or they just win outright by completely steamrolling them or boat racing them, as we were talking about before the show, then the Giants guys will certainly get there, and a stack can get there too.
Minnesota tops in our top stack tool, Giants second, Bills third, and then we have a pretty big gap before you get to Cincinnati, which honestly is kind of crazy to me. Like Joe Burrow is really good. There are multiple pass catching options that work, even P. Ryan out of the backfield. I find Cincinnati to be oddly sneaky today. I don't know what's going to happen, where I'm going to end up with the Bengals, but they just feel like the team that I should be getting to. I just don't know if I end up with, I don't know if I ultimately will as much as I want to.
I just wonder if they're going to be underowned because like people love those historical data things. And I've seen so many NFL.com, NFL Twitter tweets, kind of things of them being like, Burrow's been so bad against the Ravens. They play a defense he doesn't like. And it's, that's what happens. And that's how guys get better and eventually get really good at beating that same defense and seeing it time and time again and improving.
Do we get any puppet Lindquist on the way out?
He's all the way over there. But the important thing is you get the real puppet Lindquist. So I'll actually have my hand inside our Lindquist when he does the stream later today. That's my promise to everybody out there. Everything that comes out of Eric's mouth will in fact be a puppet Lindquist bit. No, I don't know. Just follow me at Chris Spags. Go subscribe to @SplashPlayPod on YouTube. 5 days a week of football content. I don't know. I'm going to be doing that now that we're out of the basketball season, Josh, but I've made my commitment and I'll keep doing videos even if nobody watches them. That's my promise.
There we go, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the first look. Stay right here. You don't have to go anywhere. The NFL Deeper Dive is coming up next. Laffy, Ben, and the boss man, Alex Baker. You guys know him as Awesemo. They're going to break down everything for you for the next hour. Good luck today, everybody. Enjoy this football Sunday. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
Let's take on the house at No House Advantage on this NFL Wild Card Sunday. I'm Pete McCarthy for Odds Shopper. Give us a like, subscribe, keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways. Once you do subscribe, hit that notification button. That'll give you alerts when our shows go live. And remember, almost all of our shows and content are available in podcast form on your platform of choice. To the picks, we're looking at Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings. And why are we looking at Dalvin Cook? Because I'm expecting a ton of points in this Vikings-Giants game on Sunday. Indoors, great environment. The Vikings have played a number of high-scoring games over the course of this season. I think Dalvin Cook is a guy who's going to be extremely active both on the ground and through the air for the Vikings. We're looking at that 90.5 receiving yards plus rushing yards line. The projection has him close to 100 as far as that goes. We have free projections over at Stokastic.com. So pound that over on Dalvin Cook. I will warn you, go back to that last Vikings-Giants game. Cook only had 77 yards from scrimmage in that game against the Giants, so he was under, but not by much. And really, I'm expecting more points from the Giants and Vikings than we saw in their regular season meeting last month. So again, with Cook, I'm looking at the over, whether it's on the ground, through the air. I think he's going to have ample opportunity. I think in playoff games, teams are going to their stars. Justin Jefferson is another one that you could consider the over on. Our projection just has him a little under what the versus the house projection is for Jefferson, so I'm not throwing him out here. But I am looking at Dalvin Cook, being that we have his projection as over, and I think he's going to have ample opportunity in this game against the New York Giants that should be close, and I think will be up and down the field. If you haven't played at No House Advantage, sign up and use this $100 deposit match. So when you sign up using the link below, you throw $100 in, and they're going to match that and give you another $100 to play with. So you'll have $200. Two ways to play at No House Advantage. You could play versus the house like we're breaking down right now. These lines are generally going to be pretty tight. This is going to be what you're going to see at the books. If you say put 5 of them together, you can mix sports. You get 5 out of 5. You hit for 20 times your entry fee which is pretty rare to see. That's a nice haul to be able to get in return. So it's one way to play versus the house. If you do that, definitely want to look at things that correlate. Maybe you take a bunch of overs from that Giants-Vikings game, which is what I'm giving you here, and you can mix in some other plays as well. You can also play in the pick'em contest that I really enjoy. There's typically a lot of overlays. That means more money's going out to the players than in to no house advantage. That's always a nice thing when you're playing. And you can hit pretty big, $15,000 first place prize on this wild card Sunday in the main pick'em contest. And we have free projections over at stokastic.com for no house advantage to make it super simple for you. We're doing a lot of the work, and then you kind of pare it down and decide what you might expect from a given game. Player, fine, but it's a great starting point at the very least. Looking at our projections for over and under some of these numbers. Our projections also like Daniel Bellinger, the tight end of the Giants, to be over. We're looking at 23.5 receiving yards for the Giants tight end, projected for over 30. He's been over this the last couple of weeks. He didn't play last week against the Eagles, but the two before that, he was over this number. Again, this is a game where I'm expecting points. I'm expecting these two teams to go up and down the field. That's what I'm playing for when I'm putting these selections together. You can look at Saquon Barkley and decide if you want to go over on, say, his rushing yards plus receiving yards prop. You can look at some other Giants receivers. But for me, Daniel Bellinger has the biggest plus margin on the projection versus when you look at his receiving yards. It's something he's done quite a bit over the course of this season. And I don't mind with a tight end that could get here with 2 catches, getting to just 24 yards. Sometimes it's hard for a tight end to get to, say, 50 plus.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. Oh, you're not. What did you? I moved. All right. I wasn't. I didn't have Zoom up, and then I pulled it up, and I saw something like this, and I just assumed, hey, we're in business, boys. Oh, nice. I'm a professional.
Chat's going nuts right now.
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Deeper Dive Super Wildcard Weekend Edition. Sunday, 3-game slate, coming off an insane Saturday, epic comeback by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Horrible call by Al Michaels, by the way. I don't care what anybody says. That was a terrible, terrible call. Like it's like this guy really wanted Jacksonville to lose this game, but that's besides the point. Fun weekend already. We got 3 games to dive into today. We got the regular crew back in action. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafay_D, LOUGHY_D on the Twitters, joined by Ben Rasa at Jazzraz himself. Jazzraz DFS himself. What's good, brother?
Man, yeah, welcome back.
Thanks,
and
man.
Alex and Eitan had a good show yesterday. Good slate for me. You're right. Al Michaels, Tony, don't leave Tony Dungy out of that. He was awful as well. Horrible. That whole game was horrible. Everything about it was horrible. But I'm excited. 3 more games. It's weird. It's just 1 more game, but it's insane how much an extra game changes the dynamic of the DFS slate from 3 to 2. So different.
Huge difference. And yes, the fact that Al Michaels like, well, it's looks to be good, but there's a flag on the field. It's like, dude, what do you do? They just orchestrated one of the biggest comebacks in playoff history. And you're just like, it was okay. Anyway, also
well, maybe he was that guy that placed that $1.4 million bet.
Good point.
Yeah. He's calling down to the field like there's a flag, but who knows? Anyway, it was weird. Great win though. And joining us, you just heard the man. You see him right now, Alex Baker at Awesemo DFS, Awesemo himself. What's happening, man?
What's up? Yeah. Yesterday it felt like we had everything right going into the second half of the second game, but that's why they play both halves. So like I think whenever the defense and several opposing players are in the optimal, that's going to be a tough one to get right. So hoping today's is a little bit more logical.
Yeah, I mean, one can hope, but I'm not going to stay convinced that that's the case. Another thing, too, can we agree that is Doug Peterson? The first half, I'm thinking, what is this guy do? Like, you're facing the worst run defense in the league statistically on a number of levels. And Ben, he's like, all right, well, my quarterback is shitting the bed on literally every pass attempt. Let's just line him up in shotgun, have him drop back and throw it no matter what. Despite every time ETN touched the ball, he's breaking off chunk yardage. And then finally they fix it. The guy has 20 carries, 100+ yards, beautiful 4th and 1 run outside that they back. Like, the first and second half, it wasn't just like, hey, the Chargers collapsed. It was Jacksonville and Peterson figured out how to call plays again.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that. I mean, that was the part that was so stupid about the game. Jacksonville didn't really do anything. They played awful. They had 5 turnovers in the half. It was just, the Chargers are just at a different level. But I will say, for all the bad plays and the missed challenges and so many things, that 4th and 1 call was an absolute stud call. Going for 2 was really smart. Both of those things, really, really good decisions late for the Jags.
And Doug called a timeout. I'm like, this better work, Doug, because now you get 2 timeouts. If you don't convert here, that's essentially game. And it did. So we saw some, it worked. Anyway, let's dive into it. Very happy to have you guys with us. Shout out to Josh Engleman getting north of 500 likes here before. I'm used to having to do all the legwork with these fellas, having to get the odds from Ben, having to get Alex's analysis to push us over the top. But we're in a good spot. We're at 541 likes. If you haven't done so yet, you know the drill. Atone for your sins. Wash yourselves clean of that stink and become a new man or woman, whatever it is. Take a single second, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We love you for it as we head here further into the postseason. Let's dive into it, boys. Alex, Dolphins, 13.5-point dogs here against Buffalo, 43.5-point total. I'll tell you what, the fact that Tua's out, they're bringing him back next year, they say, but Tua's out. Teddy might back up Skylar Thompson, but it's Skylar Thompson starting in this one. No surprise, they're massive dogs on the road, 23 degrees in Orchard Park. They've played them really tight all year, but that was with Tua, right? Like, they almost beat them on that Saturday game. They beat them at home when it was 400 degrees. The complexion of this game looks a whole lot different than it did compared to their first 2 meetings this season.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Buffalo is lucky as hell that it's Skylar Thompson starting and not Bridgewater or Tua, because they'd have a much better chance to win. That would have been like the bad beat if they had to postpone that game and miss the bye and then lose in the wild card. But it seems like a matchup that is firmly in their favor now with Skylar Thompson, because he's not shown much, averaging less than 6 yards per attempt. The last 2 games, he's averaged 5 yards per pass. That's just not going to get much done in fantasy or on the scoreboard. So, yeah, I think the one thing from a fantasy perspective is everyone's going to be playing Jeff Wilson today because Raheem Mostert is out. And he does look like one of the best values on the slate.
He does. And look, Ben, it's not always fun to, throw a running back out there as a 13.5-point dog, but it is also a 3-game slate, number one. This isn't a main slate. Wilson is cheap. He's already been essentially the lead back, but Raheem Mostert was getting worked in a lot as well. You've got him down with a broken thumb. You also have somebody in Skylar Thompson who, we've seen him target Mike Gesicki more. We've seen him with, not really hurling balls deep like Tua did, and even Teddy Bridgewater at times is willing to do. The hope here is that if they do fall behind early, Jeff Wilson stays involved in the passing game and just sees, a shit ton of snaps, unless it's like Salvin Ahmed getting a ton of opportunities in this one. But I think regardless, whether you love him or not, Jeff Wilson still should see volume in this game, even if they play from behind. Where do you stand on his pass catching upside? Because that's going to be crucial.
Yeah, I mean, you would think given the limitations, you talked about pushing the ball down the field. One of the easier ways, and it's not just him, of course, we're going to talk about like Tyreek and Waddle. I would assume their plan is going to be get the ball out to these guys and then hope that they can get not even lucky, but make some plays. And that includes a guy in the backfield in Wilson. So I do look that he should have elevated target share, really could help the floor because, I mean, look at the screen. They're 13, 14 point underdogs. It's not a good team total. They're in Buffalo. There's a lot of things going against them. But on the other side, again, they're going to be playing from behind. And I still think some of these Miami, skill position players could have value.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, then let's dive into that a little bit. And while we're on the subject, how open are you to having, the Jeff Wilson lineups, of course, without Skylar Thompson, or we could talk about a stack there if you'd like. Anything can happen, especially if they're playing, from a huge deficit. But how comfortable are you having like the Jeff Wilson, Tyreek Hill lineups as a run back to maybe a Josh Allen stack, which means in that case, you're going to be foregoing a lot of other top tier options. And we can talk about that. But just from a strategy perspective, how do you intend on playing the Dolphins today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jeff Wilson's an obvious value back, mid-range back, whatever you want to call him. When you get to the wide receivers, it's a little more boom bust. Like Tyreek is simply overpriced, but he's not going to be popular, and he's still Tyreek Hill. Same with Waddle. And I'm not playing Skylar Thompson. I'm not going to make a case for him, but I will say it's a small sample size, and he played the Jets in both starts, and that's a tough defense. I mean, maybe some of that was just matchup. If he throws the ball 40 times today, it's not inconceivable that someone on the outside could have a game. It's a tough spot, there's no doubt, but I'm not completely omitting guys like Tyreek or Waddle just because the looking at our projections and our ownership here at Stochastic, they're not getting a lot of love in the field, and you can get some serious leverage with not that much exposure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know I sound like a crazy person, Alex. I don't even think Mike Gesicki is the most insane thing, even though I just said I sound insane. Like, I don't know if he's been like, he's the guy that was completely not underutilized. He wasn't utilized at all. Skylar Thompson had been looking his way. So you're still talking about a cheap tight end, probably a negative game script where they have to pass. I'll have some pieces of somebody like Mike Gesicki, as gross as it sounds. Where do you stand on the pass catchers, though? Just 3-game slate, not a ton of options, but then you've got 2 really expensive guys in Hill and Waddle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a little bit tough to get to Hill and Waddle, like partly because, the price, but also if you feel like Jeff Wilson, and like Hill or Waddle, like that's a lot of Miami exposure, and they're just not in a great spot here. Buffalo's defense is very tough. It's super cold in Buffalo today. It's like 20 degrees, so that's going to impact the passing game for Miami, and you're not starting with a very high baseline. So I think Tyreek and Waddle, they're totally fine at their ownerships, but I'm going to limit it to probably one play at that kind of bad value to get different categories. So Skylar Thompson is someone I'm probably going to fade completely. I feel like, do you guys think there's a chance that we see something like with that Baker Mayfield game where Skylar Thompson plays like one drive and then it's Teddy Bridgewater the rest of the game or something?
That's a good question, especially being that this is like, even with that Baker game, they didn't really have anything to play for, right? In this case, they have everything to play for. The season's on the line. I don't know. I'll throw this to Ben. What do you think the chances are, Ben, that Teddy is Teddy Bridgewater going to be active and be an emergency backup? Or is this going to be a spot where let's see what Skylar Thompson could do if he just sucks over the first couple of drives? Maybe they pull that lever and Teddy Bridgewater comes in.
I mean, it's not a decision I'm really wrestling with because I have no interest in Skylar Thompson. Even if Teddy Bridgewater was inactive, it wouldn't really change what I'm doing there.
But Teddy makes Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle a whole lot more interesting.
Yeah, I don't really understand the concept of if he's good enough to back up, how is he not starting? Like, right. What exactly is the point there in a playoff game? Like, if he's good enough to come in an emergency, you would think he would be good enough to just play. So I don't know. I mean, certainly it can't hurt those pass catchers, but I'm just going to bank, like Alex said, you want to take them as a one-off and be different. Certainly as a run back, most people who stack Josh Allen, I assume are going to go to Wilson. And I get that. He makes a lot of sense, but maybe you change it up. And instead of going Wilson, you go Tyreek or Waddle, and your Buffalo stack looks a little different.
Any interest in cheap Gesicki or Smythe, who had actually 5 targets last week, only ran 13 routes, but was on the field a lot blocking, 13 routes, 5 targets, combined 11 between the 2 tight ends there.
I don't mind Gesicki. I definitely have him in the pool. Again, you mentioned maybe Skylar Thompson and him, certain guys have certain, connections with the quarterback, the volume's there. And we've seen in the past, he's been a focal part of the offense. So at a pretty weak tight end position, I think that's fine.
Yeah, Smythe is minimum salary too. He finds the end zone with like 3 for 28 and a touchdown. Never know. Just throwing it out there. Anything else for you, Alex?
Yeah, I just mentioned I'm probably not gonna play Gesicki because like with the tight end, you're really hunting those touchdowns, and the touchdown equity is going to be pretty low for this team. So don't mind a shot on Tyreek though. I mean, he's a guy that can catch a ball 5 yards deep and take it to the house. So there's he can get it done with whoever's at quarterback.
Talk about Buffalo on the other side. You got the Bills, massive favorites, Ben. No surprise here. Now it's really just a pick your poison type of situation. I will point out that Isaiah McKenzie is questionable for this game. I don't actually know if he plays. He didn't practice on Thursday or Friday. I don't know. It seems like a legitimate game time decision here, unless you've seen something that I haven't, but it is the earliest game. So we'll have that information with plenty of time before this slate kicks off. But you've got Diggs, clearly the preeminent option in this passing offense. We'll talk about the running backs in a second, because that's another mess in itself. But Diggs, and then, Gabe Davis, who's been, unfortunately, a pretty big disappointment for most of the season, coming off a double-digit target game. You're basically banking on 6 targets, 2 of them go for touchdowns on deep balls. Otherwise, this dude's floor, I mean, he's got a bottomed-out floor. And so does Dawson Knox, another guy that could he have a 2-touchdown performance? We've seen it multiple times in the past. Like this is what we're dealing with here. A lot of big potential, but also a lot of question marks.
No doubt about it. Now, obviously, the big difference is the team total for this team is much, much higher. So as Alex was alluding to, like, you have a much better chance of lock boxing into a touchdown here or there with some of these guys, even on limited targets. I mean, Dawson Knox, he's scored in 4 straight games, and some of those he really didn't have a ton of looks. Gabe Davis, when he doesn't get there, he cripples your lineups. And when he does, he normally is a guy that you basically have to have in tournaments because his ceiling is so high. You've got Allen and Diggs. I expect, and a lot of people have caught on to this, these running quarterbacks in the playoffs, I'm not even sure they'll need to do it here, but like Josh Allen's not going to be hindered running. Like if he needs to run, he will run. These are playoff games. It's a little different. He was already super active on the ground anyway. So Buffalo, for obvious reasons, is a premier option if you can allocate the salary properly.
Dolphins have allowed the second most rushing yards to quarterbacks this season as well. So should be a pretty decent spot for Allen to take off. As far as this stack goes, Alex, if you're pairing Allen and Diggs, of course you're paying a premium. It's not absurd, right? I think Diggs' price is pretty fair. What are your favorite ways to stack the Bills? Because we all know the Bills stacks today as 2 touchdown favorites at home are a good spot.
Yeah, definitely. And like you can't really go wrong with the Bills stack because Josh Allen gets so many of the rushing touchdowns too. So it's like the touchdown equity of your stack is going to be high because it's either Josh Allen throwing or Josh Allen rushing. And there's not that much other ways they score. So Diggs obviously is a great option. Kind of looking at the Bills defense as a possible option to pair with Josh Allen. Not something I do a ton, but I just feel like a lot of people are going to have the Miami players, and there's a chance that Miami just doesn't have that many plays, and then the Bills just like have a huge score because they just keep getting the ball quickly. So that's kind of one avenue I'm going. James Cook is one of the better values at running back today at 4,800 on DK, so not much more than the minimum. And he's interesting because he gets targeted at a very high rate when he's running routes at 24% this year compared to 13% for Devin Singletary. So even though they play about the same, James Cook's projection for targets is much higher. So that's kind of a sneaky way I'm stacking it is Josh Allen and Cook along with some other player.
All right, so shout out to chat for alerting us to this, and I just pulled the tweets up now. A couple Bills beat reporters are reporting that McKenzie is in street clothes, sneakers and a baseball cap. Baseball
Nice.
cap. It doesn't look like someone who's going to play is what they're saying. Inactives come out shortly anyway, but it doesn't look to be the case. Ben, if McKenzie ends up not playing, I don't think we can necessarily overlook the impact that this has. Again, on a larger slate, you might say, yeah, whatever, not a huge deal here. Do we really want to, run the risk of hopefully getting a few targets to Shakir or something? But that could certainly make a difference because I don't know. Like, also, is Jamison Crowder playing? I know they designated him the return. Was he ever activated?
I don't think so because
I didn't think
Cole
so.
Beasley is active for this one.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So then what do we do with these real tertiary options? We've seen it happen before in Buffalo Bills game. They're not afraid to spread the ball around.
Yeah, I think Shakir is a great value today because the last game McKenzie was out, he ran routes on about 70% of plays. He's shown good ability when he's been out there. Honestly, if I have McKenzie penciled in any lineups, I don't mind just swapping completely to Shakir because I think they're going to project about the same.
Ben, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it'll open up some salary if you take one of those guys. My biggest problem is that we mentioned Beasley, we mentioned Shakir. I don't think that it's John Brown, but like it's not a given exactly who slides into that role. It could be several guys or the targets could be absorbed by someone else. So definitely opens the door, but I don't think it's a clear spot on who it could be. I think Shakir would be the leading guy who would benefit though.
Yeah, I think Shakir would see a pretty significant uptick. I'm not saying necessarily in targets. There's nothing we can do about that. But as far as being on the field goes, and that's all you can ask for, running routes on a team with a monstrous implied total at home, I think Shakir benefits considerably. And it looks like McKenzie's going to be out. Shakir's the dead minimum salary, Alex. So, I mean, at this rate, especially in a high-powered offense that can just provide big plays, he might not need a ton to get you there, especially if you're running out Josh Allen stacks. And this allows you to get Diggs, maybe you throw Shakir in there, but then it allows you to upgrade like a mid-tier receiver to a Justin Jefferson potentially, or a Jamar Chase, or upgrade to a Saquon Barkley or a Dalvin Cook. Shakir could move the needle a lot as far as roster construction goes today.
Yeah, I think Shakir is a solid play at this point. So especially
If Crowder's out, of course.
Yeah. So 3K projects for 6.6. That's not anything you're going to be scared to fade, but certainly a good play.
Anything else for Buffalo? Alex, you talked about James Cook. Do you want to dig into these running backs a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. Singletary and Cook look like a pretty even split. There's a possibility Nyheim Hines sees a little bit more work because he had those 2 return touchdowns last week. So, I mean, I'm a little bit confused why they never use him at running back, but at the moment, I'm kind of leaning towards Cook because he's just cheaper than Singletary by a significant margin, and I think they're about equal.
Ben, what about you for the running backs?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a tricky situation. it's pretty fluid in the sense that one of these guys could get the hot hand and they say, okay, we're gonna take it from say 50-50 to 70-30. And so that gives them both certainly, I think, merit to being in your lineup. It's a good offense. I'm fine with them. I think that Wilson obviously is going to consolidate a lot more volume, but they're on a better team in a better situation. So I have a decent amount of both Cook and Singletary, not necessarily together, but in various lineups.
All right. And yeah, I know, Manny. I just wanted a little bit, more elaboration on that. That's all. We got 3 games in an hour, so we're good on time here. All right. Anything else for Buffalo or Miami, fellas, or should we keep this one moving? Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Thank you. Let's talk about New York Giants and Minnesota. Before we do, though, Jordan, can I get an overlay report on No House Advantage? I'm curious to see what the playoff contests look like. I know one thing. They're purposely just making sure these contests overlay because they want you guys to check out the site. It's another reason that they upped the first match deposit bonus from $50 to $100. We've got the tools that Alex Baker right here built himself for the stochastic top stat or the stochastic optimal lineups tool, the stochastic player prop projections, all of that specifically for No House Advantage. And it's all free over at stochastic.com for you to get in on that. It's 15K to first today.
Nice.
Ooh, okay. 15K up top. It is, what does that say? 21% filled.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
21% filled with an hour and a half to go until lock. Of course, it's not gonna, I'm not gonna blow smoke up anyone's ass. It's not gonna finish at 30%. Remind me to tell you where that saying comes from, by the way. It'll interest you.
You're talking to me or society?
To you, because you'll have to remind me after this read. But it's not gonna fill. It's not gonna come close to filling, and that's all that matters here. Massive overlay. That's better than any bonus you're gonna get. Better than any thing that sites are trying to like odds boosts or whatever. Like over here, you're getting legitimate overlay. It's a way to sustain making money and win money and take advantage of a great format, because all you're doing is building lineups without a salary cap. You're just taking props, the over or under on either side. You're putting them in your lineup. The ones you like the most go at the top. They get the most points. The ones you like the least go at the bottom. They get the fewest points. And you play against the field. 15K up top. It's going to overlay. You use the link in the description. You're getting the $100 first match deposit bonus. Link is in the chat as well. And all of our free tools for No House Advantage over at stochastic.com. Check it out. Take advantage of it. Awesome site. And they just continue to do big things and get better, like adding the play against the house format, where if you hit all your picks, you're 21xing your entry. Check it out. I think you guys will like it. No House Advantage, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. All right, let's move on. New York Giants. Alex, 3-point dogs. People like the Giants today from a betting perspective, but from I know Ben shakes his head. We'll get into that. But from a DFS standpoint, there's just so much cheap value here on a team that not more than a few weeks ago on Christmas Eve came out there and was in the Millie Maker winning stack with like 6 players from this same game.
Yeah, I mean, this one's going to be the game that everyone wants to stack because it's a dome game and 2 competitive teams. So Daniel Jones in particular, I feel like he's going to be mega chalk. That doesn't mean I don't like him, but I think I might be under the field just from game theory perspective, just because it's like the Giants still are kind of a mediocre team, and I just think Daniel Jones ownership is going to be really high. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it from my slate standpoint.
All right. Yeah, look, there's no doubt that this is going to be a popular team bet. I think, especially with only 3 games. Saquon Barkley, we got him pulling 51% ownership right now. By the way, 5 free days for all of our NFL content, which means the links in the description for that and in chat as well. We extended it to 5 days so you can really take advantage of it. I mean, optimally, you should be doing it on like a Wednesday or a Thursday. But today you're still getting, they got massive showdown contests. All of our showdown tools are available. You have the main slate. You have tomorrow's showdown. You got tonight. You have all of these. So throw that link in chat for anyone that wants to use that too, Jordan. Because if we're referencing our tools, it would make sense for them to be able to follow along. But yeah, Barkley's up there. Richie James is up there. Just Hawkinson, or I'm sorry, Hodgins is at 29, almost 30%. It's going to be a popular team today.
Yeah, it's because it's a super easy build. Like Daniel Jones isn't expensive. His receivers aren't expensive. You can easily attach Saquon. You've got, a whole Minnesota team that everyone wants to attack. It's an obvious game stack. The lineup builds itself. And that's kind of my problem with it. It's not to say that I don't have some interest in this, but when you do it, the chips kind of fall, the pieces fall into place and you build your lineup in 2 seconds and you quickly realize at these ownership levels, you're not the only one doing that. So you're going to have to find some ways, maybe be a little different. Certainly Daniel Jones has some rushing upside. I think that's a wild card with what he can do. But as you know, Laffy, I still have interest in the Giants and DFS side. I'm stunned at the love they're getting in the betting market.
I know you are. And don't bury the lead here. What are the ways you're looking to get different?
So with the Giants, I think that you can get different. Certainly, it's a 3-game slate. You can get different if you have like Tyreek in there and whatnot with these guys. But if you're just looking solely at the Giants, I don't think it's crazy to maybe go. I think most people are going to allocate Saquon in there. Maybe go like skinny stack with Daniel Jones, hope that he runs one in. I'm interested to see what you guys say about Bellinger. I don't really see it as a way to get different, but maybe that's one attachment that you can do. Or just even, like I said, you have 3 options in terms of receivers from Slayton to Hodgins to James, all 4,500 or less. So you can attach a couple. I think most people are going to go Daniel Jones, Saquon, and one of those, and then bring it back with several Minnesota players.
Alex, same question to you. How do you find attacking this team if you're looking to be different? You already said the ownership is a little bit concerning in a spot like this, especially when you're talking about guys like Richie James and Hodges and Darius Slayton, all of them, albeit at really cheap price points. But are there any ways to differentiate here, or is the differentiation path to just play a lot less Giants than the field?
Yeah, that's definitely an option. It's tough because they're good plays. One other option is you could play them as one-offs because obviously lineups with Daniel Jones are a lot more likely to have McKenzie, Richie James, and Darius Slayton. So if you just play them without Daniel Jones, I feel like that might be getting them at a big ownership discount with that combination of players. So I think maybe instead of stacking the team, because everyone's stacking it, like going for a one-off could be the game theory move.
I kind of like that, yeah. Because it's entirely possible that Daniel Jones doesn't have a huge game.
Yeah, that isn't that hard to conceptualize.
Right. But he's being rostered like he's a lock to smash for 35 or do, what he did last time out against the Minnesota Vikings. I think that's a good point here. Yeah. Or it's just spots where maybe, Ben, you go like a Barkley with one of these cheap pass catchers without Daniel Jones, maybe not even in the game stack specifically, because it's possible Barkley has a big game and then one of the receivers has a nice game. He's cheap, but it's not massive and it's not enough for Daniel Jones to be optimal either.
That's where his rushing comes into play. If Daniel Jones doesn't have a big rushing game, it puts tremendous pressure on the other parts where they become better one-off plays. Because, the rushing upside is isolated points. And so if he has a crazy game on the ground, obviously anything else, he's going to get there. And then the stack, if he has even more, he's going to have a huge game. But as you mentioned, Saquon runs a couple in. These wide receivers, they could get there with no touchdowns easily, and that doesn't help Daniel Jones one bit. So I totally get that. I think that's one of if I had the crystal ball, I would just tell you, where does he finish with rushing upside? How dangerous is he on the ground today?
Yeah. And if he's not dangerous on the ground, it could be a long day for anyone overweight on Daniel Jones for sure. Hit on a super chat here. Manny C, what's up, man? Member for 21 months. Yeah, you want to join? Hit that join down below. Get the free super chats each month, the custom emojis, the sweet badges. We do some other cool stuff for the for the YouTube members along the way. Much love to the entire team. You too, man. Appreciate you being with us all this time. And Anthony, $10 super chat. Thanks, man. Good morning, gents. FanDuel, and then in parentheses, still mad about yesterday. Yeah, that was insane. Shakir and Dalvin Cook versus Slayton and Andrews or Dobbins. So Shakir and Dalvin versus Slayton and Andrews, or that could be J.K. Dobbins. Any thoughts here, fellas?
All right. Okay, so Andrews, I feel like that one, I mean, good player, but the quarterback situation there is like pretty rough. So maybe that would make me lean towards Shakir and Dalvin.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I like Dalvin quite a bit here. Jordan, if we have any more super chats, feel free to throw them in. I may have missed some earlier in the show. Ben, do you have a take on that before we keep going here?
I mean, I think that's definitely the safer side, just because of all the guys we're talking about in that 2v2, Dalvin Cook, you know, is an integral part of a team with a really healthy total. Andrews is the wild card. We've seen, you know, double-digit targets, and he's an elite tight end, but we'll get to the old, they're platooning their quarterback. I mean, we'll save that for just a little while. I'm not sure what Baltimore's doing here.
McKenzie officially out. So we have that news. McKenzie officially inactive today. We got that inactive report just a few minutes ago. Talk about Minnesota. Ben, Justin Jefferson. Again, no surprise that you're going to see, you know, massive ownership on a guy like him. The four highest owned players on the slate are all from the same game. Looking at our ownership projections, you have Barkley, then Cook, then Jefferson, right, basically neck and neck there around 40%, and then Richie James. So, like, this is the most popular game stack. Of course, it's going to be more popular than Cincy and Baltimore, two good defensive teams. One team offensively has been completely anemic, and now it's, you know, Huntley, or it's going to be Anthony Brown. And then Buffalo and Miami, there's one great side of that one, but the other side certainly doesn't stack up. So no surprise we're seeing this. No surprise the top stack tool has Minnesota number one with a 76 rating, 28% top stack probability here. And also the top value score goes to Minnesota in our top stack tool as well. So everything clearly, and for obvious reasons, lines up for the Vikings, such as Cook, Jefferson, Hawkinson. We can talk Osborne, sub 6K Kirk Cousins, for all of these guys to be really popular. How do you want to play this though? Because we know that they're good plays. That's easy.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's the obvious game stack. If you think you can be different in the other spots, this team is at home with no weather concerns and a healthy total. And despite everyone thinking that they're absolute garbage, they are in fact favorite. So take what you want from that. I'll give a couple betting takes at the end of this spiel. But yeah, I mean, it's Justin Jefferson. The guy is unbelievable. It's a 3-game slate, so things are a little different. But normally on the main slates, he was pushing 9.5. So we are getting a discount from him. It makes it a lot easier. You've got Osborne, you've got Thielen, you've got Cook, you've got Hawkinson. It's not great analysis, but I'm comfortable with any permutations of them with Cousins. I think those are the guys that I'm looking to. It's a great team to target. They're the top stack for a reason, and I'm very comfortable with them today.
Alex, same question to you. From Jefferson to Cook to Hawkinson. We'll talk about some of the tertiary options in Osborne, but let's start with the big three first.
Yeah, I mean, Jefferson, certainly a great option. Like, it's hard to have like some great analysis here because everyone knows he's one of the best players on the slate, and I expect him to be owned as such, especially because this game is going to be very popular. So I think he's solid. I like, don't have anything bad to say about him. Dalvin Cook, I kind of like because of the leverage, where a lot of games where the Giants are a little bit underwhelming, maybe that correlates to Dalvin Cook getting more attempts. So I think he makes a lot of sense, but he's also kind of high owned too. And Hawkinson, I think totally fine. Like, the one thing I'm leaning against is like just stacking the whole game up a ton, because I feel like that's going to be very popular today. So we saw yesterday, some games that might even have bad weather conditions like that San Francisco one. Just went bananas. So I'm hoping that one of the other two games is the game of the day, and this game, has a little bit of a less exciting game flow.
Because Ben forgot to remind me, Paul and Boats did and asked, where does blow smoke up your ass come from? You've heard the saying, right?
I literally forgot.
You guys have heard the saying.
I've heard the saying, yeah.
Yeah. It's a real thing. They used to blow tobacco smoke up people's asses to try and revive them and bring them back to life. Dude, it's
how did you find that out?
Particularly drowning victims.
Or what?
Particularly drowning victims. I believe the old story goes, back in England, there was a man whose wife, it was, fallen into a puddle somewhere and had drowned. And in order to revive her, they took a tobacco pipe, little tobacco enema, jammed it up her ass, blew some smoke in there. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, she came back. So they started using it as a pretty common medical practice.
I'm going to have to unsubscribe from Today I Learned on Reddit because we're getting all the TILs here.
Look it up, man. That's true. That's true. It's a true story. Yeah.
Now we got to talk about bald face liar and how it's not bold face.
Yeah, dude. Bold face is now accepted, but it originated as bald face. Same with chomping at the bit. It was champing at the bit, but
I'm awful with stuff like that. I'm so bad with sayings that are just like there's a million of them I could go down the list. I never know what they actually are supposed to say.
Yeah.
Well, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, here nor there. All intents and purposes, free for all, ends meet. I thought that was like a shitty type of meat. I didn't really understand. I was like, oh, you got to make ends meet. Like you're poor. Like now I realize,
Did you really?
Yeah. Well, how the hell am I supposed to know these things? I was in medical school, not English school. What do I know?
All right. Well, now you know. They used to ram tobacco pipes up people's asses and blow some smoke up there, bring them back to life. Tobacco enemas, baby.
Right.
I don't know. maybe someone will try and revive that. All right. No pun intended. I'm talking about the procedure. It's Joseph with a super chat. Daniel Jones in single entry, ? Ownership going to be higher than Allen or Burrow, ? That's from Joseph, Ben. So essentially asking about Daniel Jones in single entry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I think that I would assume that Josh Allen comes in a little higher owner, but Daniel Jones is not going to be sneaky by any iteration. It's just how you build the lineup around him. I have no problems with Daniel Jones in any format, really.
Okay. Anything else from this game, fellas? I think we touched. Oh, let me go back to you, Ben, just for like the Hawkinsons and the Osbornes. I know we dug into that a little bit here, but like, are there any other spots that you're looking towards to say, hey, maybe this is a good way that if this game kind of goes sideways, that maybe I can benefit from it in large field tournaments?
I mean, I think the easiest way to roll the dice is actually just to have, because I think it's too aggressive to just say like, oh, I'm going to fade the game. I mean, can it happen on a 3-game slate, of course, but maybe just a piece in a defense. Like everybody is ripping, the Vikings defense. And in some ways, I think it's warranted, but maybe just having, a piece of them and say Dalvin Cook in their defense, and you can still coexist with a Giants receiver, something like that build. And then you stack up one of the other teams, I think will be very different. And maybe you consolidate the touchdowns and it comes in, 10 points under the total, something like that. I don't think that's inconceivable by any stretch.
Alex, anything else to close this one?
Yeah, I kind of like the Giants defense as a contrarian option. Minnesota is a little bit more pass heavy than New York, so there's a little bit more upside with the Giants defense, and you're getting a ton of leverage versus some popular plays.
All right, and then Hannah with a free super chat. Jordan, we're just assuming. Yeah, okay. I see what you're doing there. Let's see. It was okay. Best running back plays and maybe a tight end no one is playing. Okay, so as far as best running back plays go, I think we know the obvious ones, Alex, are going to be Saquon and then Dalvin Cook. I think from a value perspective, Jeff Wilson is down there as well. You mentioned James Cook earlier for that Bills team. Are there any tight ends that just are being overlooked entirely? Maybe they're not dirt cheap, but any tight ends that you think have value here from a low ownership standpoint?
Let me pull up the boom bust tool real quick. One guy that I'm getting a lot of is Hayden Hurst, I guess. I do like the Bengals stack, so that's playing into a lot. And in general, I think just stacking up your tight end with whoever you have at quarterback is probably the easiest option. But then there's like 5 guys all getting about equal ownership, and it's hard to really pick between them.
Okay. Ben, any running back plays that might stand out to you as going overlooked?
No, I really honestly don't think so. I mean, the only guys that we really haven't talked about are Madison, and I think it's too thin. I still think Cook will get more than enough work and it boxes him out. And then we'll talk about Dobbins in a second, but they got all sorts of problems. I do want to say real quick, for people who like to do a little wagering over on the Odd Shopper channel, we got a lot going on for the NFL. This is moved to 2.5 in some spots. At 2.5, I like Minnesota. I will be plunking down my money on the Vikings today. Sub 3. I do not get this spread at all.
You did say you could see this happening throughout the week, and I didn't.
I waited. I did I timed this perfectly. Like I waited, and now the pressure's there, and books have moved to 2.5, and I will jump right on the Vikings.
I think that's probably a good idea. I mean, wow. I really wasn't. I wasn't confident that it would, but it did. I mean, that's surprising. It's definitely surprising. And if you're going to place bets today, and you're sitting there thinking, I'm going to make some bets, but I'd like to get some more on top of that. I'm just throwing this out, just spitballing here. Maybe 2 free months of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Maybe some free bet insurance, or some bet insurance up to $1,000. Get everything back in bonus bets if you lose. That's on the table, baby, because if BetMGM is available to you, we put the link in the description. We put the link in chat right now. If you sign up for the first time, you have $10 and you have maybe 2 minutes of your time is all you need. You take $10 when you click that link, follow the directions. It takes 2 minutes to get it all signed up and ready to go. Take that $10, put it on any game, any player prop. All right. Whether you win or lose, you're getting 2 free months of Stochastic Plus Platinum. That means it's $240 value. Not only that, if your first bet loses, you get it all back in bonus bets. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Ben, I'm thinking there's people out there saying, all right, I'm grinding. I'm trying here, trying to make it work, but I haven't been there yet. That picture of you is hilarious. I'm trying to make it work. I would love to sign up at Stochastic. I can't do it right now for what it's worth. I want to get in the Hall of Fame. I'm rocking the avatar. It hasn't happened yet. Is there a single better way to do it than to take advantage of 2 free months when you take $10 and put it on anything over at BetMGM? I think not.
No doubt about it. It's got a little something for everyone, whether you're focused more on the betting side, more on the DFS side. It's just a great opportunity. The only gripe I have about this is I got to talk to Chris about these pictures. I don't know what the hell is going on where they found these pictures of me, but I'm not a fan of them.
For real though, it's sick, and it's 2 free months. You get in our Discord, you get all of our tools and all of that. No questions asked. Everything that we've got on the site, not just for football, but for every single sport. So take advantage of it. Links in the description. Link is in chat. And as they say, the legal age for gambling is most states is 21 or over. If someone or you has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Got to do that now.
We got to talk about how like this. Okay, the first bet insurance of up to $1,000. They'll buy a lot of ends meet.
Yeah.
You see? I thought it would.
Alex had that one lined up for a while.
That's not the case. Who knew? I'm thinking like, it's like spam, Like
that's awesome. Links in the description. We'd love to see you guys over and check our tools out. It's as simple as that. That's it. Come over, take the $10, join our site. You just put it down on anything, and we're in business. Bet doesn't have to win. Doesn't matter. You're locked in. After it settles, you'll get your 2 free months. All right, let's talk about Baltimore and the Cincinnati Bengals here. Live before a lock coming up right after this. They're taking you all the way up to kickoff. So please do not go anywhere. You would be a silly person to do so. Eric Lindquist, Matt Gajewski coming up next. but we'll start with Baltimore. Ben, my assumption here is that Huntley plays. He said he's 90% healthy, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but he's been terrible. He was terrible even after Lamar went down, even before Huntley got hurt. Anthony Brown completed 19 of 44 passes last week in the same matchup. That was pretty dreadful. I mean, the simplest question is whether it's Robinson or Andrews or J.K. Dobbins, how do we approach a Baltimore Ravens team that has been pretty lifeless without Lamar Jackson? I was also surprised that Gus Edwards doesn't carry an injury designation because he didn't practice for a while. But what do you make of Baltimore this week?
Not much. I mean, this is a real bad situation for them. First of all, there are reports out there that they may use both quarterbacks in different packages. So not that I had interest in them, but that renders them pretty much useless. It's tough. They're going to have to really slow the game. I think they actually have a fighting chance to keep it respectable. I don't mean anything like that. I just worry about how much they can get in terms of value. This is ballooned. This is pushing 10 points now. It shows you where the money's going. So since he's taking a lot of money here, and there's just not a lot to say. Dobbins has to get there on the ground. That's just what he does. He is a decimal back, sorry to say. And then you've got pretty weak options on the outside. You've got Andrews at tight end. Demarcus Robbins. I mean, Robinson, Sammy Watkins. Like, there's just not that much to really go around besides maybe one-offs for this team.
Alex, when you look at a team like this, we know on one hand that Baltimore is probably the least one up. It's them or Miami really as the least appealing teams on a 3-game, 6-team slate. When you look at something like this, how do you differentiate between low ownership, small slate? Maybe there's good leverage spots there. Maybe there's good tournament plays. How do you differentiate between that and just saying maybe a team, even with low ownership, is really low on because they just shouldn't be played?
Yeah, I mean, if something's low owned, it's because it's not a good play in most instances. So that's no exception with Baltimore. I'm pretty worried about those same reports Ben was mentioning. So I kind of crossed off Huntley from my list. So I guess maybe the guy I'm honing in on the most is Demarcus Robinson. He's 3,500 on DK, and you're going to need some cheap value on today's slate. He has been getting targeted a lot when he's out on the field at about 20% this season. So he's kind of the guy that no one's going to be thinking about that could be a winner in that late game. So he's kind of interesting. Sammy Watkins, I guess he might be a little bit too pricey. Or no, I guess 3,300. But I don't feel great about that. And then Isaiah Likely, he kind of went off last week, so I think some people might try to chase him, but that was because Andrews was rested. So not a lot here, to be honest.
Ben, what about you on the other? Well, actually, before we go to the other side, let's hit a couple super chats. We still got plenty of time here, and the Bengals, yeah, we're in good shape. Also, 700 likes. I fault myself for not reminding you guys throughout the show. I do not fault you. I think Alex and Ben share some blame, even though I'm the host here. For what?
I said, "Wow."
Is it just all me?
Yeah, I thought we were being very likable with our analogies and stuff.
Yeah. Me too. You're right. That should have got it done. And we got 3,100 people, more than that, watching. There's some of you out there that can take a single second, atone for your sins, and get that thumbs up, get that like number up. I'm not even going to say 1,000, unless you guys are,
not getting to 1,000. We have 7 minutes left.
Herculean task here. I think it's tough. What'd you say?
I said, yeah, we have 7 minutes. I don't think we're going to be, what are you going, like 50 likes a second? Let's not get crazy.
Yeah, at this point, we would need 227 within the next 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's 30 a minute.
Yeah, but there's 3,100 people.
That's one every 2 seconds. Get out of here with that.
You just have a disdain for society, and you doubt people. Yeah,
I don't like society. I like our chat. I just don't like society.
All right. Well, okay. let's like get a couple super chats here. Jordan has sent these over to me. All right, James with a best player at each position for a DK single entry. Man, Jay, you're asking a lot here, pal. I got to be honest with you.
Each position, I like that.
Yeah, at each position, $2 super chat. Just like, hey, build my lineup, please, on an hour-long show. All right, let's do it like this. Alex, best quarterback option.
I guess Josh Allen.
Best running back, Ben.
I mean, Saquon.
All right, I'll go Jefferson at wide receiver. Best tight end option. Alex.
Go ahead.
Bellinger, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. And best defense, Ben.
I think the Giants for tournaments are a really interesting defense.
All right, what were you going to say before I cut you off?
Me?
You were saying something.
When? I don't even remember.
All right.
I guess something I want to mention is that the Ravens defense, I think, is pretty solid, and they're huge underdogs, so I don't think people will go to them. But Cincinnati does get sacked at a high rate, and Joe Burrow's been known to throw a pick or two. So I feel like the spread is going to tell only half the story here.
Okay. And then we had another one. Chad Razman Porzingis. A little throwback action there to what was his name? What was his name, Jordan? Nico Pico. Thank you. I have a problem, and the only cure is more cowbell. Rasa, can you prescribe me a low-owned bell cow running back to win me a I can think of another medical procedure that might help you out there too, Chad. So where does bell cow come from, Ben?
I don't know.
Okay.
Do you?
I mean, they literally put bells on cows, right?
Right. But like, is the bell cow the one that we don't have time for? I'm saying, but how
He's
does
the
bell
lead
cow
cow?
relate to what?
Like he's the leader of the
That's
pack?
what I'm thinking,
I
right?
would assume. I don't know.
Maybe he carries heavy stuff on his back. Who knows? Can you prescribe a low-owned bell cow running back? That's kind of an oxymoron, but a low-owned bell cow running back to win me a DK GPP. A lot of pressure here, pal.
No, not really, because my friend, there on a 3-game slate, there are no low-owned bell cow backs. That's the actual truth. Anyone that gets serious work, like Jeff Wilson, is going to be more popular. So I think that's kind of where I would look there. If you're looking for a low-owned running back, of the guys that kind of are the lead guy, J.K. Dobbins would be the lowest owned of them. But again, he is a decimal back, and I worry about that. So if he doesn't score, it's hard to get there.
All right. And shout out. This is why I love chat. They just came through big. I think that was the assumption, right? Okay. The lead back, they got the bell. Okay. All right.
I just got confused because I was in Europe and like all the cows had bells. So like maybe it's just a US thing.
Maybe it's just like that was like a very alpha group of cows that you saw.
That was probably it. Yeah.
All right. And we are going to get to 1,000 likes. So Ben, they rub it in your face once again. We need 61 likes to get there. It's happening with 3 minutes to go. And remember, guys, 5 free days. Link is down there. 5 free days of everything for NFL, including the lineup generator, which is sick. Showdown, GPP, everything you want, main slate, and BetMGM, no house advantage, everything in the chat. Ben, let me go to you with Cincinnati here. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon's very popular today. Joe Burrow. As far as this game goes, like obviously this is a great team. Baltimore does still have a very good defense. Ever since Roquan Smith came to town, they're just better and better. But like, this is just one of these things. Great offense, great defense. How does this play for you today, given the circumstances?
Yeah, in some ways, I could speak to both sides of this because I really do respect Baltimore's defense. They're really cheap, and I definitely have exposure to them. But I also like the Burrow stack. I mean, Burrow's got elite weapons. They're at home. They're a big favorite, and it's just simply for the game theory side of it. Most people, rightfully so, are focused on Danny Dimes, focused on Cousins, or going to get Josh Allen. So you still have T. Higgins, you've got Boyd, you've got Chase, you've got Mixon, you've got Hurst. That's a pretty good cast, just like Minnesota's, but all of them are basically lower owned than their respective Vikings at the same positions, whether you go Chase to Jefferson, Hurst to Hawkinson, those type of 1v1s.
Totally agree with you here, man. Like if there was one way to do things differently a little bit, especially when like when you know that if you're going with Justin Jefferson and Barkley and a full stack in that game, you're likely foregoing a lot of these Cincinnati pieces. There's no doubt about that. Alex, what about you here from a game theory standpoint? How does Cincinnati play in large fields?
Yeah, I like the Cincinnati stack. It is a little bit tougher because Baltimore doesn't have great plays on the other side, but I think that might mean less people are going to play Cincinnati. And they throw at a very, very high rate, the highest on the slate. So you have to have confidence that when they get it done, it'll most likely be passing rather than rushing. So I think there's not really a player on Cincinnati that I don't like, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I also don't mind like the mix and chase without Burrow. There's just a lot of different ways to make this work. 1,000 likes. Fuck yeah, boys. There we go. Right on the nose. 12 o'clock.
I had a challenge for there's a countdown clock on the top of the screen. I think you were a couple seconds late.
It is still 12 o'clock, is it not?
No, well, I don't know how that works because it's.
What do you mean?
What is beyond 12 o'clock?
Okay. It's not 12:01. It's not 11:59. Just
fine.
Just saying. And all right, shout out to the best comment today. If you showed up late and you don't understand the context of this, you will be confused. Johnny Doe Dillinger said they used to shove bells up a drowned cow's ass to bring him back to life.
It sounds like a line from Tommy Boy, but it's certainly not.
What he said, like you don't shove your head up a cow. What did he say? The butcher's ass or a cow's ass?
Take the butcher's word for it.
Yeah, that's it.
Something like that.
All right. Favorite way to stack Cincinnati, Ben, before we close this out. And you can include Mixon in there with this because he's pretty popular as well.
I think that including Hurst is the way to go. You got Higgins and Chase, but getting that tight end attachment is a real good way to start.
And Alex, last question for you. Favorite way just to get different on this slate before we turn the page over to Live Before Lock?
Just stacking with the non New York Minnesota game.
I guess it is that simple, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's hope for a lower scoring game. You guys are the best. Appreciate you. Have a great rest of the day. Good luck tonight. Stick around. Lindquist, Gajewski coming up next, Live Before Lock. And as always, shout out to the wonderful Jordan Klein for producing this one. Follow Ben, Jazzraz DFS, Alex, Awesemo, DFS, me at Lafayette_D. All the links down there. Take advantage of good stuff. Doesn't come along every day, but right here, we want to get you in the door. Give you a piece of that action. Let you know how it feels. And we'll see you over there. All right, guys, later.
Yo, what's up, guys? Alex Baker here for Stochastic. Talking some NFL wildcard weekend. Got DraftKings lineups on the mind, so let's hit up the Stochastic lineup generator. This is my favorite way to hand build a few quick lineups. So so in a 2-game slate, usually what I'm looking for are 2-man stacks. I'm not really worried about a run back. If it happens, it happens, but I'm not trying to really go for that. All right, so 2 games, obviously, it's going to be a little bit interesting to get different here. Brock Purdy, Kittle, Samuel, and the 49ers defense, and Christian McCaffrey. I don't know if I love it, honestly. It's just so many San Francisco players, and I know this has a pretty decent shot at winning, but I'm just thinking in my head, it's a little bit tough to see Kittle and Samuel and McCaffrey and the defense. Well, the defense getting there is fine, but all right, I'm going to discard that. But Brock Purdy again. And this time we got Kittle, we got McCaffrey, and the 49ers defense. This I feel a little bit more comfortable with because obviously Kittle and McCaffrey can each get a touchdown or 2, and then the 49ers defense going 2 tight end might be a little bit sneaky. Most people don't like to do that. So I think this one is pretty solid. The projection is very high, close to optimal. Let's save it. All right, this one, I noticed the projection is 10 points lower, so we're giving up a lot to get contrarian here. We got IU Kittle, 49ers defense.
You know what that's from?
No. I imagine you just say that.
I'm here. It's the Patrick Mahomes thing.
E.T.?
Nah, not really. But what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the NFL Live Before Lock Show presented by No House Advantage. I'm Eric Lindquist, excited to be talking through this NFL Sunday 3-gamer we have before us. Hit that like button. I see everybody's done a fantastic job with that already, but just in case you just got here, hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell as we get going. Goes a long way for us here on the channel, and very much appreciate it. Makes us feel good about ourselves, and I feel pretty good about myself because I get to hang out with my buddy Matt Gajewski. He's Matt_Gajewski over on the Twitters, and finer of what is he? He's a lover of culinary arts such as, I don't know, just hot dogs. You just smash some hot dogs after.
Hot dogs rule.
Yeah, I don't know. What else do you eat on a daily basis other than tuna and hot dogs?
Turkey. I don't eat hot dogs on a daily basis. I almost never eat hot dogs. There's a rule in my apartment. I can't buy them.
How many would you eat in one sitting?
I could like comfortably eat 4 or 5.
It's like me with pepperoni pizza. I feel like that's the one food that I can just put down in a different rate than other foods.
Pepperoni pizza is phenomenal. So I don't, that's something I could probably do too.
Yeah. How you doing, my dude?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Last night's game was super entertaining. I actually turned it off for a little bit because there was really good college basketball on too. And I only have one screen. So I was flipping between the Texas Tech college basketball game, and then slowly started to see the Jags creep back in and turned it back on. So I didn't see all of the comeback, but saw most of it, and it was super entertaining. And I thought the first half of the Seattle game was really entertaining as well, kind of before the wheels fell off. But I had a great time watching the games yesterday. How are you doing? How did you enjoy the games?
I'm good. I mean, obviously, the fire Brandon Staley into the sun. I was really high on that hire when it happened for the Chargers. I bet Chargers pretty much across the board last year. This year, I knew Brandon Staley was not an NFL coach. It was pretty easy to stay away at some points in time. Keenan Allen being hurt there for a while probably saved me from firing at some points in time because I thought the Chargers had a ton of momentum and looked great coming into the playoffs. And God, the week 18 debacle with Mike Williams followed up by that. Sean Payton is going to be awesome for the Chargers.
I'm just so confused because Staley seemed like he was a forward-thinking analytical coach last year. He took a lot of heat for what he did on 4th downs, and he completely switched this year, started taking, I don't know, the football guy mold, which was exacerbated by the Mike Williams situation and playing your starters in the final week of the season in a meaningless game. But I don't know. He's kind of always whimsically towed the line between being analytical and being football guy. But ultimately, I think he did cost himself his job.
Good. I like the hire when it happened. I can't deny that I didn't. But yeah, I'm with you. He kind of seemed like the world beat him down this year, where he started doing things that were more like acceptable for a football mind to be doing, rather than going for it on 4th down all the time, which is the right thing to do.
Even last year, I mean, schematically, he's been running that kind of like too high shell safety thing to get our hands in the dirt and talk some real football. And that's been really successful at, lower levels of competition, or if you have the right personnel, which I think the Chargers do until they have injuries. It's really easy to run a difficult scheme when you have Derwin James and stuff playing safety. But then when Derwin James, who gets hurt, which he does often, and he has in the past, then you bring in backup safeties and suddenly you start getting absolutely demolished on the ground, but you don't make any adjustments. So I think there's some holes in whatever analytical approach he was even taking last year. So maybe there were some cracks, the writing was on the wall, but I don't know, maybe he could do something like Bill Belichick, build himself back up as a coordinator, learn from his mistakes, but I don't see any way he makes it through this offseason. No chance.
No chance. The Mike Williams injury alone is just so egregious, regardless of the result. mean, 3.5 quarters. If it happened in one quarter of football, you wanted to get some guys some reps, so be it. But enough about that. We've got 51 minutes. We got Jordan Klein on the virtual glass for hour 48 today. Very excited. He's so happy to be here right now. Right?
Can only see half his head.
A little bit of that. Ready to rock, though. Obviously, I'm rocking the purple and gold. Ready to rock. It feels like Christmas morning. Probably will be disappointed as well. That's like Christmas night, right? Chard, Razman, Porzingis. I haven't gotten to say that name yet. That's amazing. Super chat for $4.99. Eric, since the Vikings will definitely lose today, which low-owned GPP play on DK will you help wipe the tears away because they will help you win big money? I've got a guy, and we'll get to it a little bit late. It's likely that we'll talk about a player that I find to be likely to be good, named Likely, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm excited. Tight end. It's going to be wild, but let's start position by position. That's what we do on this show. You ready to get into it, my dude?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
All right. Quarterback seems pretty clear cut. Josh Allen has a lot of upside. He's really expensive. Joe Burrow for $1,000 less. I find myself gravitating towards him and that Cincinnati Baltimore game a lot on this slate. I have a lot of exposure to the 6-game slate where I do have a lot of Minnesota and New York. And when I was looking at the weekend, I kind of planned on being very heavy on San Francisco, Seattle. That worked out nicely. And then getting heavy on Minnesota and New York. I already found some really awesome low-owned pieces, differentiation there. Now I'm going to play it there. But on the 3-gamer itself, Joe Burrow coming in, lower owned than Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones, seems pretty wild to me. Does it seem wild to you?
Yeah, I think it's a price thing. When you look at the slate, it's fairly tight, and there's obviously a ton of stud receivers and running backs. So you can make the argument, especially on DraftKings, that every single $100 you save goes somewhere. So the question to me is, how much does that savings actually do in our lineups? But ultimately, when you talk about those high-profile receivers, none of them are attached to Daniel Jones. One of them is attached to Kirk Cousins. 2 of them at least are attached to Burrow. So Burrow's a guy I already want pieces of. And then you talk about the ownership leverage we may be potentially gaining here. I think he's an awesome GPP play. There's plenty of ways to construct plus EV lineups with him, whether it's Jamar Chase, whether it's T. Higgins, or even getting a little more contrarian with Tyler Boyd or Hayden Hurst, who might be a little more chalky than the other players we mentioned. From a leverage standpoint, Burrow's the guy where my first instinct brought me to as well.
Yeah, it's just when you look at the board and you understand the stacking options, you understand the upside, and Baltimore's defense is awesome. They're fantastic. I don't care. Joe Burrow is very good at football. And when you give me him on a 3-game slate as the 4th highest owned quarterback, I think I'm probably going to take that every single time. We'll see if that comes to fruition here, but I do expect dome game, Minnesota, New York, both of those quarterbacks pulling quite a bit of ownership, but not as much as Josh Allen up the top. First question, are you playing cash today?
Yeah, it'll be Allen in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it feels like you don't need the savings when you have something like an 8,400 Jefferson, super cheap wide receivers on the Giants side for a cash setting. But Josh Allen, how do you plan to utilize him in tournaments? Because as you said, he's your cash game quarterback already.
He's actually pretty tricky for me in tournaments. And I think a lot of this comes down to the Isaiah McKenzie news, which he was like probably the trickiest guy to look at all week long. I legitimately didn't know if he was going to play. Like I wrote an article on PrizePicks and I included it in it because I thought there was a pretty good chance he did suit up already. Let's talk about that situation in a second with Allen. But for tournaments, I mean, the chalkiest player that's going to come along with him is Diggs. But you immediately have a pretty decent leverage point in Gabe Davis, who from a projection standpoint is always a little bit overpriced compared to really everyone else in the slate. And it's, I think, largely because he's a volatile player. From a mean projection standpoint, he's always a little undervalued. But we always have this massive ceiling with Gabe Davis. And like generally half the ownership today, it's in that range. He definitely is not going to be anywhere close to as owned as Diggs. So that's immediately one leverage point. And now we have the wide receiver 3 roulette you can play with Khalil
Shakira.
Yeah, John Brown. I mean, that doesn't even include Dawson Knox, who's kind of in a weird price point at tight end. He's kind of smashed in between the expensive TJ Hawkinsons of the world and the cheap Hayden Hurst of the world. So don't anticipate him being heavily owned. For tournaments, I think Allen's still very, very playable because you're probably shaving off a bunch of ownership just by being a little bit contrarian with even just the pass catchers. Like if you go to Shakir instead of Richie James or these other cheap receivers people are jamming, that's going to shave off some ownership as well.
I think this is probably a ridiculous thing, and I want to talk through it a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
They're 14-point favorites, basically 13.5, 14-point favorites here in Miami.
Yes.
I do think Teddy Bridgewater ends up playing in this game at some capacity, maybe way more than we think, maybe very, very minimally, but like Skylar Thompson officially sucks. Okay. Josh Allen, you have Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, Khalil Shakir. All three of those guys kind of pale in comparison to Stephon Diggs. Now, maybe if Josh Allen hits that true ceiling, you need to bring somebody along for the ride. But like Stephon Diggs is still 7,700. I prefer getting to Jefferson if I can. 8,600 for him. 8,400 on the 6-game slate. Just some different stuff where I'm looking at this. Is there any possibility at all that you would think about playing Josh Allen naked today?
Probably not.
Okay.
I think you could, because we know that there's running equity with Josh Allen.
Right.
But this team throws so much. And like if this gets funneled to Diggs and you don't need one of the other pass catchers, like Diggs is cheap enough where you still probably need him. If it doesn't go to Diggs, like the other guys are definitely cheap enough where you're going to want them as values. So I think I'm going to be forcing in the Josh Allen stack. I don't have any of him naked right now. I'm still building, but I don't think that's going to be a way I take it. Do you have a different view on that? They just throw so much. He would probably need like 2 or 3 ground scores, I think, for that to pay off.
This isn't backed up by numbers. I do want to do some digging at some things. Well, so this is more of like an inherent thinking about football, thinking about ways to get different on a 3-game slate. Quarterbacks inherently, you need to win today. Everything is a must-win scenario. Josh Allen, there are multiple instances and ways that this game plays out where he has 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. Maybe the right way to do it is to bring along just one cheapie and leave Diggs off. Hope that somebody gets targeted once or Khalil Shakir gets 2 of them there. Maybe it's Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox is probably my favorite guy to get to if I'm going to play a single stack with him without Stephon Diggs. But like, there are a lot of iterations where Josh Allen rushes for more than 50 yards, 10 plus times carrying the ball and gets 2 rushing touchdowns. Like, I don't think it's such an off the wall game script. And I just think it's something absolutely nobody is going to do. So I kind of want to do it.
From a leverage standpoint, I don't disagree with you. Naturally, even people that are building by hand, not taking into account correlations, you're accidentally going to run into some stacks because it's a 3-game slate. So if you go into that knowing purposefully, I want Josh Allen naked, I don't think there's going to be a lot of lineups that take that approach.
I think we're also probably valuing Miami so much differently without Tua, without Bridgewater. If you're looking at Skylar Thompson for the full game here, Waddle and Hill and Gajewski, it's just so hard for me to find a run back that isn't Jeff Wilson. We'll get to that conversation because that's just another uncomfortable click when you know that he's going to be pulling some ownership. But I can't imagine there's going to be a running back that sees anywhere close to that kind of workload wearing a Miami uniform today. But as far as quarterbacks go, we've talked about the main guys. Do you have any interest in playing Tyler Huntley today?
Yeah, the biggest thing that scared me was that rap sheet report that came out. I was awake, but it was kind of in the middle of the night.
I get it.
That Anthony Brown and Tyler Huntley could split reps. So Huntley is coming into the game. He's certainly banged up. It's a shoulder and a wrist injury. And why I like him has to do more with his mobility than what he does through the air. But ultimately, how many snaps does he play is a major question. Now, I'm not the only one that realizes this. So at a certain point, if enough of the field has this in mind, maybe we want to be sprinkling Huntley. But even from a portfolio perspective, say you're building 150 lineups today, I think he's a guy you could probably just sprinkle into that and you're going to be well above the field. Even if, say, you got like 10% Huntley, I don't think he's going to be that owned. How are you approaching it?
Yeah, I have a little bit right now, but it is just a large field GPP thing. I can't imagine I'd run into him in any 3-max single entry, anything of that nature. Like the $3, the 25. I'm happy to have some shares of Tyler Huntley just in the event that a 5K quarterback works out for you and you just flip the build. You maybe get to Justin Jefferson, Saquon Barkley, and Jamar Chase in a way where nobody else can, and Huntley just does enough. I like Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews a lot at the tight end position to try to get different, get away from some of the other pieces getting a ton of ownership, even though TJ Hawkinson, I think, is rightfully owned and popular for good reason. I have enough on the 6-gamer. I'm not worried about it. But Tyler Huntley, I think that if he ends up being the core guy, you're just trying to, I would say this too. If I'm going to play Tyler Huntley at 5K, I don't want to be leaving $600+ on the table. I probably want to be using it up and getting to all the major skill position players.
100% agree. We have him around 1%, 2% on a 3-game slate, which is ridiculously low. But with that said, anything smallish field, like this probably needs to be 100,000 entries or more for me to consider Huntley, because he has 2 elite quarterbacks he has to beat out from a price adjusted standpoint, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. I don't think either's likely. He has to beat out the 2 quarterbacks in just the nut game environment, Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins. I don't think that's likely. And then we also are betting that he plays all the snaps, because if he's going to outscore them, even on a price adjusted standpoint, I think he needs 100% of the snaps. And we don't even have that as a guarantee. So,
right. But that guarantee is factored in the ownership, because if he was starting, he'd be 10% or 8%.
Yes, for sure.
So you're getting the ownership discount to account for the risk. And that's always something to keep in mind when you're playing something like Tyler Huntley on this slate. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be going for the core pieces, playing Andrews, playing Isaiah Likely, playing those guys. Demarcus Robinson don't completely hate, but it's just weird looking at this Baltimore receiving core, considering Sammy Watkins is now there. James Proche is still a human being who exists in the world, and they released Deshaun Jackson before the playoffs started. So wild stuff going on there. Anything else from quarterback for you whatsoever?
Yeah, I would think we should at least say Skylar Thompson's name just due to the nature of the slate. Like Huntley, I don't imagine anyone's going to play him. The Bridgewater stuff is concerning. I don't understand it. I think it's more like gamesmanship than anything from McDaniel, because like if Bridgewater comes in this game, you assume he's healthy enough to produce on the field. But Skylar Thompson, if he gets all the snaps here, I think he's fine as a play at 4,800. He has mobility, hasn't really shown it. And what I keep coming back to is, like this could be the Brock Purdy effect. If he gets 100% of the snaps, he has Waddle, he has Tyreek Hill, Gesicki, a really good cast of players around him. So I don't even think it's meaningful what Skylar does from an individual talent standpoint. If he just delivers the ball to those playmakers, they could be the ones that sort of backdoor him and carry him to fantasy success. But again, you're gambling on him playing even all the snaps.
Al Putz, Kenyon Drake GPP winner. We'll talk about him. I definitely have Kenyon Drake interest. I have some disgusting plays today on this 3-gamer, but that's kind of the nature of it. And I'm doing it with all the help of all the tools and content we have here at Stokastic. And the best way for you guys to check that out without any cost whatsoever is by checking out BetMGM. If you guys are in a state that has legalized betting, this is the opportunity for you. 2 months of Stokastic Platinum. When you check out BetMGM, you get a bonus bet from them up to $1,000 that is uninhibited. You have a great opportunity there. You simply use promo code Stokastic. You sign up in the video description box below, and look at that. First bet insurance up to $1,000. Whoa! Crazy face. It's weird. These aren't pictures I completely hate. It's weird to like that picture more than the other picture, but such is life. Yeah. Get those 2 free months of Stokastic right now. First bet insurance up to $1,000 on that first bet you make over at BetMGM. And then you're going to get all the Stokastic tools and content. It doesn't beat that. That's as good as it gets. So you guys want to get the NFL Top Stacks tool here as we're coming down to the wire. All the showdown slates. That is by far the most valuable thing I've found is just the boom bust tool, along with all of the single game stuff that we have here, is unbeatable. I know Neil Orfield there in the chat. We've got Terry McBride. These guys are just smashing some of these showdown slates throughout this season, have had some massive wins on DraftKings and FanDuel, and they've done it by just using the tools, by factoring in who's going to be positively leveraged. Getting access to that is worth its weight in gold. Do it through our friends over at BetMGM. Don't forget 1-800-GAMBLER if you have a gambling problem. Take advantage of that. So 21 or over as well. Cool. To the running back position we go, my friend. And at the top of the board, Saquon Barkley pulling a lot of ownership. Dalvin Cook pulling a lot of ownership. Makes sense. 48 total. all the things kind of line up for it. Do you have a preference to get to one or the other?
I think it's Saquon Barkley, just from a skill set. Very good pass catcher. So I think he's a little more insulated to games getting out of control than anyone else on this slate at this position. Dalvin Cook hasn't had quite the receiving workload as previous years. Mixon's actually quietly had like a pretty good receiving workload. He is reaching career highs in a lot of receiving stats, but he's still not the clear third down back. Like they'll use Samaje Perine in a lot of those instances still. So in terms of just running backs that are insulated from things going wrong, Saquon Barkley, I think, makes the most sense for cash games. He's the one I'm prioritizing. If I need to make a concession, I'll make it with one of the other two elite guys. But Barkley's the guy I'm certainly prioritizing. And even he's coming in around 40%, as is Dalvin Cook. I think it's more likely that Barkley's the under-run player out of the two. What do you think about the expensive dudes?
I'm totally there with you. I think Saquon Barkley, he's going to be a problem. He's going to be a big, big problem. I think the bubble wrap started to go on him around week 17. They played Indiana. That was a freebie. They just waxed them. He was able to have a pretty reduced workload there. Didn't play in week 18 along with everybody else on the Giants side who mattered. And now you get Saquon Barkley on basically 3 weeks of rest playing my Vikings. I'm very worried about this human being going out and just smashing us. 7,900 for Saquon. I know everybody wants to get to the cheapies. I'm lower on Daniel Jones at the QB position. So by default, I am higher on Saquon Barkley. I'm over the field on him. I'm about there on Dalvin Cook, a little bit underneath here on the 3-gamer. I have tons of him on the 6-gamer. So I think I've got most of my exposure to him in that game environment there. For me, it just gets gross because I have some horrendous running backs in my player pool. Horrendous. And we'll start with some of the guys who actually are pulling ownership, and Joe Mixon, Devin Singletary, Jeff Wilson. These are not the least of my problems. I find them to just be okay plays. I'm not jamming anybody in any kind of capacity. I'm playing a lot of James Cook at 4,800 because I think the price point works out. I think we could be seeing a shift in workloads here. He's been more involved in the passing game, which has been good. He had that skill set going back to
Georgia.
There we go. Felt good about it. Devin Singletary went to
FAU, Florida Atlantic.
Yeah. And I feel like that ownership's a little bit off to me, where I want to get to a little bit of the guy who's 700 less and has had almost an identical workload here of late, but maybe that's just me. Do you have any pull on any of these other running backs that are pulling ownership right now?
Yeah. So I'm a little I want to talk to you about Jeff Wilson. Yeah. At his price point, I was surprised he's not coming in with more ownership. Now, I understand the risk. You're talking about a massive underdog here, but he might play every single snap in this game. We're looking at Salvin Ahmed as the backup here. I think Jeff Wilson could have a role in the pass game. He hasn't historically had the best pass catching roles, but I think that's largely because of the systems he's been in. They've been able to use two backs a lot of the time when he was in San Francisco, and same thing with Miami. He's playing in a similar scheme. But we've also seen both of those offenses hone in on one back when they need to, usually due to injury. So he's a player that I initially thought I was going to come in underweight to the field on, because, at that price point, just intuition, I think he has the highest upside and highest workload probability when you look at carries and targets. But now that I'm seeing him essentially right on par with Singletary and Cook, he's been a player I've been actively trying to get more of. It's kind of like a 3-horse race down there between Singletary, Cook, and Wilson from an ownership perspective. And I understand Buffalo just being massive favorites. The touchdown expectation for Singletary and Cook is much higher. But man, Wilson has a chance for a massive workload today too.
Yeah. And in the back of my mind, I thought about, well, what's the touchdown equity there? But what's the touchdown equity with a lot of running backs on this slate? Like Singletary and James Cook have to deal with Josh Allen. Like that's their major source of vulturing. Gus Edwards has to deal with the fact that he's Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins is back into existence. Nyheim Hines isn't on the field. Kenyon Drake, I'm playing, but that's more of a price point thing. And a flat 4K Ahmed is somebody that I actually do have a couple shares of. I'm with you, where Jeff Wilson, look at our FanDuel leverage score on him. If you guys are playing on FanDuel today, and I know that they hate DFS and don't enjoy people using their product, but $6,000 for Jeff Wilson, I was like, the touchdown expectation isn't high enough. I don't know if I can get there. He's optimal 44.6% of the time and coming in with under 26% ownership. I haven't ever seen a player this positively leveraged on a 3-game slate, probably ever in the NFL.
Yeah, it looks like he's a phenomenal play. And I mean, you can understand why. Initially, my thought again was that he would be a little more owned than these players, but people are also looking for cost-effective ways to play Buffalo and more secure ones than that. And, rather than playing Khalil Shakir as the wide receiver 3, who might not actually be. Yeah, maybe he's not the wide receiver 3. People might just feel a little more safe playing one of these running backs instead. And then plus, like your roster construction, say you're playing a Josh Allen or a Burrow or one of the expensive quarterbacks. You're probably also playing one of Dalvin Cook, Barkley, or Mixon. To get those extra receiving studs, you probably need to pay down at one of your positions. So Cook, Wilson, and Singletary are all options. Because of that, none of them are probably, massively overowned in this spot. So I like Wilson. I'll be playing a little more of him than the field at these current projections with the ownership.
Samaje Perine, Kenyon Drake. Those are the other two that I'm legitimately looking at. Have you seen the offensive snaps for Samaje Perine the last couple weeks?
I don't have them off the top of my head, but I could easily pull them up. I know he's
43,
still
38, 41, 45. You are basically looking at a timeshare where one guy is crazy owned and one guy is not.
Right. So I think there's two things here. I imagine people are baking in that competitive games. Mixon probably sees a little more work, but how much is that? Does that drive Perine down to 15% or 30%? I think
it's playoff time too. Like I get it. Maybe you just give Mixon all the workload there, but
they played competitive games too. I mean, they're on an 8-game win streak right now, and not all those games were blowouts. So you already rattled off a snapshot. I won't do it again, nor do I have that data in front of me. Some of those games, like you could make the same argument. They're playing for seeding through every single one of them. Those are very important games. For Perine to still see 35-40% of the snaps, I think that's a pretty good indication that he'll be involved in today's game plan. Right? Don't you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. God, it's just, can I get a touchdown for my guy Samaje Perine one time? Can I get that? I mean, he's not my guy because I haven't played him. You didn't play him
that week? He had like 3?
Oh yeah, no, we jammed him when there was no Mixon.
Did Mixon play that week? I think
I don't think
Perine vultured him in 1 week a couple times. Unless my memories.
I just know he had the 3 touchdown game against Pittsburgh. I don't remember anything.
Was that the one Mixon was involved in or no?
Let's see. Yep, Mixon had to have been in. He only had 11 carries in that one. 11 carries, 4 catches, 3 receiving touchdowns.
You know what they call that? A wagon.
Vultures. He's a wagon. He's a wagon. I love that term so much. Yeah, week 11, you had Mixon play like absolute doggy doo-doo. Mixon's been bad this year. Don't mince words. He's been bad this year.
I do not have the data in front of me to confirm or deny. I love Mixon, but I won't come out here and say he's been good because I just don't know. Like from an efficiency standpoint.
Yeah, 3.9 yards per carry this season. Good job. Great effort.
But is the offensive line doing its job?
I don't know. Again, 2.5, 1.9, 2.9 yards per carry in 3 of his last 5.
Doesn't sound good.
Sounds bad. Sounds bad. Watch him just go for 40 today and just shove it in my eye hole. Go Samaje Perine is what I'm getting at.
Efficiency stats.
LaMichael's in play too for Miami. I've looked at everything on Miami, and I don't know how you possibly get away from playing Jeff Wilson today.
I love Jeff Wilson.
I know. It's just, I do have some Ahmed the terrorist down there. Did you ever see that bit? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Are you my virgins? That's Jeff Dunham. You've seen that.
No,
Come on. It's a puppet.
What?
It's great.
I was looking up Mixon. Sorry. No, I haven't seen that. You know me, Eric. I'm watching sports at all times.
Are you my virgins? It was funny. Jeff Dunham's a funny guy. It's a puppet. Oh, God. Yes. See, people know.
Mixon has not been great. I just isolated players that have at least 100 carries and looked at yards after contact per attempt. He is 36th, which isn't good. Forced missed tackles, he is 32nd, which is not good. So he's outside the top 30 in kind of your running back metrics that actually take your offensive line out of play.
Yo Mama just said, just stop, Eric. He's got an actual puppet as his avatar. He's got an actual puppet as his avatar. Coming at it about puppets. That's funny.
Anyway,
I met
I
Geoff
agree
Dunham.
with you
He's
on
an
Mixon
ass.
now.
I could imagine he's probably an ass. Anything else from running back for you?
I don't think so. Madison, we could talk about. He is a workload, at least I would say, worth mentioning. I'm not going to get there myself. Dobbins, I think, is a contrarian play and a pivot off of your like Jeff Wilson, Singletary, James Cooks in that range. He's a bit more expensive, but if you can find the 100 or 200, I think he'll come in lower owned. But those are just some thoughts, I think, for large field tournaments specifically. Neither of those players are coming anywhere near your cash games, your smaller field stuff. But final thoughts there, yeah.
Cool. Let's go. Let's go to wide receiver here in 2.8 seconds. But first, we got a bunch of super chats to get caught up on. People want to cancel me for saying something that's a puppet on YouTube. That's hilarious. Let's see. Sup, man E. Everybody hanging out in the chat. I love to see all the great peoples. Make sure you hit that like button. Goes a long way for us here on our lovely little program. Luis Salazar, $1.99. Cousins or Daniel Jones straight up?
Daniel Jones.
Straight up. Now tell me, do you really want to love me forever? Oh.
Dude, I don't understand any of your references.
It's so... Can I not
Say
do
it
J.
again?
Cole? No, it's not a J. Cole song. Wasn't that like... Who was that back in the 80s? It was a chick. Sampled it. Oh, man. Just bringing up all the things I can't bring up. That's sad. Actually, it's not. If you do terrible things, don't do terrible things, people. Let's go
If you reference like Middle Tennessee State football games from 2015, I might be able to get you.
Gee, I wonder if it's Paula Abdul. Look at the chat. I've never seen the chat blow up over Paula Abdul ever. Oh, man. I can't believe how many people wanted to let me know it was Paula Abdul. Guys, was it Paula Abdul? When you're caught in the hit and run. Dun-dun-dun. Jorge, you're coming. My guy, $10. Which chalk players would you be willing to have at low ownership on your lineup? So hang on. Which chalk players would you be willing to have at low ownership on your lineups?
Yeah, so I think he means like you're building a portfolio. What guys do you want to be underweight to? If I'm reading that correctly, I think that's what he means.
Got it. Which guys do I want to be underweight to? Let's see. I am underweight to Dalvin Cook on this slate today. I am underweight to Stephon Diggs at the moment. I am underweight to, I'm just looking at like the chalky guys. I'm way underweight to TJ Hawkinson. That's going to go well. I have him in my best lineup though, that I have going for the 6-gamer. I'm going to roll with it there as an emotional hedge, but like I can't play TJ Hawkinson at 35% at tight end today.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be some of the cheaper chalk like Richie James. I understand the thesis. It's just a cheap play. Then they really don't have a strong candidate for wide receiver one. He plays in the slot in the nut game environment, but I don't feel any sort of confidence that Richie James even outscores Isaiah Hodgins or Darius Slayton, especially with Hodgins being at such a cheap price point as well. I think you can make that pivot down. Ultimately, they're both like kind of owned, so I don't think you're getting a ton of leverage there, but Richie James will be my answer to that question.
Malcolm Revamp. I missed the RB talk earlier. Who for RB for cash, both sites on FanDuel? I would be in like this conundrum just because I look at the optimal percentage. Jeff Wilson is the most optimal player on the entire slate, but he's not the running back pulling as much. He's not pulling as much ownership as Saquon. Saquon's like a lock at 8,800 for your lineups on FanDuel. And then Joe Mixon probably goes in that bucket, but I would actually play Jeff Wilson, I think, in cash as well. Maybe you play all three. I'm not playing cash over there, just tournaments. And then for DraftKings purposes, how about you fire that one up?
Saquon for sure. And then I think you can have a debate between Jeff Wilson and Mixon. That's going to come down to 2v2s. I personally like the 2v2s with Wilson a little bit more because then you can jam both Justin Jefferson and another stud. You can usually get up to Diggs in that lineup as well. If you play Saquon and Joe Mixon, you're probably sacrificing at least one of those receivers for like Gabe Davis or something in that range. So my preferred build is Saquon, Jeff Wilson.
All righty. Will Drake be active? I hope so. I hope so. That would be great. Otherwise, I'm in trouble because I have a little bit. Not enough to have me like really freak out. All right. We're all caught up on super chats. Good. Great. Awesome. No yelling on the bus. Did you get that reference?
No, dude.
God.
What is that from?
No house advantage, guys. What?
I've never seen Billy Madison.
I'm glad Jordan got it at least. That's a cultured young man, that Jordan Klein over there. Look at him.
Billy
He knows all the
Madison?
things. He knows all of the things. You look lovely this
I
morning.
don't believe
too.
that it's worth watching.
I'm telling you right now, you know it's worth it. 21 minutes to go. The $15 on no house advantage isn't half full. It's not half full. That's absurd. We're talking about the 30K Sunday wildcard on nohouseadvantage.com. You could download the app over at Google Play. You can download it over at the Apple Store. You can also go to nohouseadvantage.com, go to the pick'em section, and you will see the $15 is not half full. That's absurd kind of equity that you're getting by playing in that. And if you're like sitting there being like, I don't have the time to go enter and play over at No House Advantage, well, we've done all the hard work for you. If you go to the NFL tab at Stochastic, go to free NFL DFS data, you have No House Advantage projections for free. NHA, NFL optimal lineups for free. Take advantage of that right now, guys. It is very difficult to find overlay unless, you know, you're FanDuel and you just shut down your sites. So how about you go play at a site that is actually fostering and helping players, that is putting players first. That is No House Advantage right now. You simply are picking player props 7, 6, 5. It's 10 through 1 when you're talking about the main slate. 7 is when you're playing on the showdown ones, and they'll definitely have some of those coming up. I gotta imagine there's going to be one for tomorrow for the Monday night Dallas Tampa Bay game. But when you take 10 player props, you're taking more or less on their numbers. Something like Raheem Mostert, do not take him, because if he does not appear, that is problematic. I will say Teddy Bridgewater is listed with 247.5 passing yards. He's going to be active. He's not inactive. If he shows up for a snap, there's an opportunity to possibly win a little bit of money over on that one. That's one I would actually have to take a look into a little bit more, because I don't want you to get a 0 if he just doesn't appear. I would have to double check what those rules are. So very, very important caveat there. But the Jeff Wilson number that we're looking at over on No House Advantage, 65.5 rushing yards. It's a pretty large prop, but as Matt Gajewski pointed out, the guy could play 90%, upwards of 100% of snaps here for the Miami Dolphins in this spot. So going to be a fascinating football game, even with the massive total. Get some exposure to No House Advantage. Find a different type of playing type that isn't just putting together your lineups over on DK or, God forbid, FanDuel.com with how much they hate us. But nohouseadvantage.com, that is the best spot you can go in the next 20 minutes to help yourself win more money. $15K to first in that Sunday wildcard. Use promo code Stochastic, get $100 first match deposit bonus. And thank you so much to them for their sponsorship of our lovely little YouTube show that we have going every single Sunday throughout the NFL season. We really, really appreciate them. Joe K, $2 super chat. Irv Smith plus Bills D versus Ravens D and Hayden Hurst on DK. So I'll repeat that one more time. Is Irv Smith in play for you whatsoever today?
No, but what's the 2v2?
Irv Smith, Bills D versus Ravens and Hayden Hurst.
I'll play Hurst.
Yeah, I will 100% play Hurst. Irv Smith got activated, ended up showing up last week. TJ Hawkinson confirmed a thing. And yes, there are going to be tight ends on the field, but KJ Osborne's been so good that they're going to probably have a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. I don't see Irv Smith getting on the field enough to matter today.
I would agree.
But Hayden Hurst, there you go. That's definitely the more secure route. I know it's more popular, but it's the right answer. Let's jump ourselves over to wide receiver, because this one is pretty important. At the top end, no doubt about it, Justin Jefferson, he's a stud, absolute stud. I said it before, I'm a little bit under the field. I'm kind of under the field on some of this game because, well, I want to play tons of it on the 6 gamer where it's going to be a little bit lower owned, get my exposure that way. How do you plan to utilize Justin Jefferson up at the top of the board?
Yeah, he's awesome. I can't really say anything bad about his workload or anything, but I'm a little underweight too. And I want to stress a little bit. I'm pretty in line with the field. And this just comes down to, I'm not playing quite as much Kirk Cousins. And I don't have a ton of interest in using Justin Jefferson as like a priority one-off. If you're running multiple lineups, you're going to get that at times, but generally, when I am playing him, I want him to be in stacks because I think he is going to be the most popular receiver. I think a lot of people are just going to try to use him by himself, and then playing him with Cousins, I think, makes the most sense. But ultimately, taking a stand on Joe Burrow over Cousins, I like Daniel Jones a little more than Cousins. not getting a lot of Jefferson to go along with those lineups where I'm playing other quarterbacks. So naturally, I end up being a little low on him. Terrifying fade, but there are certainly alternatives.
Yeah, the alternatives. So Diggs, I'm way under on. And again, I get it. He's really good. He's 7,700. It's a 3-game slate. Well, where else are you going to find some spots? He's the obvious number one. Gabe Davis has been a distant second throughout this entire season. Basically, it's been pretty wild, other than the 99-yard touchdown game that Gabe Davis got to the house on like that very first play from scrimmage. But I'm looking at Stephon Diggs as somebody that I'm just trying to short and getting to Jamar Chase for less ownership. We're talking 8,100 for the guy. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati, they're going to be airing it out. This Baltimore defense, yeah, they're good, but Jamar Chase is just on another planet too. I look at him and Justin Jefferson as about just top 3 wide receivers in the NFL. And I don't think there's a whole lot of argument against that. I want to just play tons of Jamar Chase at 10% less than Justin Jefferson, at less ownership than we're getting for Stephon Diggs. Is he somebody that you're planning to get to as much as I am?
Oh yeah. One of my highest leverage players in the slate so far. It's essentially the same reasons you said. Like, I get Joe Burrow underowned, his number one receiver, who's just been getting absolutely peppered with targets recently. Yeah. Over 10 targets in 5 straight games. Since he returned from injury, at least 8 targets in every single one of those games. He's clearly a priority in this offense. And I think T. Higgins is still very involved, but I don't think it's the necessarily the 1A, 1B situation anymore. Jamar Chase is the player they make a priority to get the ball to. Again, game environment, not quite as good, but a lot of that's reflected in price. I'll take a stand with Jamar Chase and be a little over the field on him.
Stacey Dillard, Jefferson can get there with touchdowns. He can get there with everything. He's just freaking good. And
now, what is the thing that they're saying?
Oh, they just said that Jefferson can get there with touchdowns. Yeah, he could get there with 15 catches too. Like, these are things. Dude's a wagon. Any Waddle, he's 5%. That's the only reason that I'm getting to Waddle.
Yeah, I love Waddle. I mean, like you said, 5%. It's not necessarily hard to even double the field on that. And for those reasons, I like Tyreek Hill as well. Tyreek Hill coming in at 10. So let's say Teddy Bridgewater plays in this game.
Mm-hmm.
These two guys are vastly underowned, and Teddy Bridgewater's active. Again, I don't know what Mike McDaniel is going to do. It seems ridiculous to me that he'd be active and not healthy enough to play. So the emergency backup never really made sense to me, and it still doesn't. But Teddy Bridgewater comes into this game at any point in time. That's an upgrade on Skylar Thompson. And if you just projected Teddy Bridgewater in for the whole game, what do you think Tyreek's ownership would be at? I think it'd be at least double.
Yep, agreed.
Same thing with Waddle.
Yeah, the Tyreek Hill one is more difficult because of how much I like Chase today on the slate. I get late exposure. You should all be thinking about late swap. Matt and I talk about that repeatedly, along with our friend Matt Savoca, that we've done all of our NFL Live Before Locks with throughout the entire regular season. But I just want to have the wide receivers. Now, if somebody goes for 35, you're probably going to want that regardless of what time it shows up at. But I have more lineup maneuverability by just getting to more Chase. And I, have him projected higher than I do Stephon Diggs. I have him projected much higher than Tyreek Hill and Waddle in that very first game of the day. Hill and Waddle, just from the perspective that they are low owned, so I'm getting to them. But like the Justin Jefferson one for me, it's like, I get how good of a play he was. I've been jamming Justin Jefferson more times than I haven't been, but it just feels like a spot where I think Jamar Chase could end up really low owned, just knowing how many people are going to be stacking up Minnesota, New York.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think with Tyreek, it's just, like Waddle, you don't have to do that much to be over the field on them. So I don't even think I'm really taking a major stand.
I've just handed me my water. That was nice of her.
Nice.
I was parched.
Couldn't even tell.
Well, there you go. It's because I'm a professional. Does professional things like singing on shows, and
someone has to do it.
Somebody has to. Making references you never understand. You just don't get
I can't help who I am.
I love that about you. Honestly, it's more intriguing than the opposite. Because if you just went along with everything I said, you'd be a puppet. You'd be a puppet Lindquist. In fact.
Good pull. Good pull.
See, it's all coming full circle. Let's go to this mid range because again, not really mid range. We'll just go sub 5K because it gets really, really crazy to me. This is like almost the difference maker of the slate when you have guys like Slayton, Hodgins, Richie James, all three of them pulling crazy ownership. We're talking All of them, 25+%. Richie James, nearly 38% in our last run of ownership. I don't really want to do this. I am trying to get to KJ Osborne. I'm trying to go to Tyler Boyd more just at 4K to try to have some points of differentiation. DeMarcus Robinson at 3,500. How do you feel about these cheap Giants chalk?
Not good. And I mean, I would rather just play Darius Slayton. Like he's not that much more expensive than, excuse me, he's not that much. Maybe I need the water. He's not that much more expensive than Richie James. So if you're playing like a Giants chalk receiver, I don't see any reason why Richie James should be over 10% more owned than Darius Slayton. The price difference is $300 on DraftKings. Yes, that goes somewhere, but it's also not hard to make a concession for somebody that should be the wide receiver one in this New York team. So just in a 1-for-1, you're playing a Giant. Let's say you're stacking Daniel Jones and you don't want to eat the Richie James chalk. I think you can make a natural pivot to Hodgins or just even down to Slayton, and that could make a lot of sense. Now, if you're playing a different quarterback, I think this is very easy. You mentioned Tyler Boyd, extremely easy. Run him on as a double stack.
Yeah.
KJ Osborne makes a lot of sense. I actually like Thielen more than Osborne, so I'll play Adam Thielen happily. He's under 20% owned. Neither of those guys are going to be owned whatsoever. And then if you're playing Allen, you can always run the Bills wide receiver 3 roulette wheel and see what you get. So there's plenty of options to pivot away from the cheap Giants chalk.
Yeah, it's always a fun game, the roulette wheel. Again, I want to come up with cases to get to more Thielen than some of those guys, and it just turns me into KJ Osborne the most. He's 12%. He's really started to show up on the field a lot more, been a really prominent wide receiver 3. In that come from behind against Indy, really had his breakout game, 16 targets. Don't expect anything remotely close to that, considering, you don't expect them to be down by 30 in many scenarios. But KJ Osborne has been just #good, looks really good out there. Been enjoying his progression at the tail end of this season. Hopefully that can continue into next year, or, as far as he could possibly go here. Again, not feeling the best about the Vikings today, but KJ Osborne feeling pretty good about a point of leverage. Anything else from wide receiver you want to highlight?
I don't think so. I'm really trying hard not to play DeMarcus Robinson, trying really hard not to play Trent Sherfield or Sammy Watkins. Those are players for Millie Maker style tournaments. So names worth mentioning. I'm trying my very best just to not play those guys.
Chard Razman Porzingis, $4.99. I need a low-owned play. Who would you go between Shakir, Brown, and Beasley, knowing that I need to be different? All right, well, I mean, Shakir's the guy pulling actual ownership about, he's 8% right now. Brown and Beasley are completely unowned. I just don't think Brown and Beasley, like John Brown had that one catch for the touchdown. That's kind of what you're looking at from John Brown. He's going to be 0 or 12. Like there's really no in between for that guy. So big play, John Brown, I think would probably be my preference over Cole Beasley if you're going to try to take a shot on somebody that isn't Shakir, but Shakir by far the most certain of the 3.
Yes, I agree. I would prefer Shakir.
All right, cool. Jorge, another $10 super chat. You guys are the best with these. Would you go double stack on all QBs today, 2 wide receivers? I am definitely not doing that.
Agreed.
Cool. We move on to the tight end position then. And TJ Hawkinson talked about it. Don't want to be playing him at 34%. I could see him being much higher. Dawson Knox, pretty wild that he's pulling as much ownership as he is, because I was expecting him to be lower owned. He has started to reemerge. He's started to get back to that prominent role we saw at times last season. Has he spiked up that 20-point upside like we saw many times last season? No, with the exception of this very same Miami matchup at home, also week 15. But for me, it's just a 4K guy that's attached to Josh Allen. That's never going to be too big of a deal for me, but I'm trying to get away from Hawkinson. How are you feeling about the top 2 tight ends on the board today?
I don't mind either of them. I'm with you on the Hawkinson, not fade, but I'm going to come in underweight for a lot of the same reasons as Jefferson. And there are other options. I love the Knox pivot there. I don't hate using Mark Andrews for 100 more, especially if Huntley's a little healthier than we're anticipating. We've seen in previous samples where Huntley will just lock onto Mark Andrews and feed him targets. Hawkinson is still competing with Adam Thielen, with Osborne, with Jefferson. Mark Andrews, when you have the conjunction of him and Huntley both healthy, you're going to see 12 targets for Mark Andrews, especially in a game where they're projected to trail by over a touchdown here. So I think he makes a lot of sense. I think he's the most talented tight end on the slate. And honestly, Hurst, I believe, is probably going to be a little more on than this just because he's probably the punt preference. Wouldn't you think?
Yes.
I think so too.
Bellinger, popular. Hurst, popular. Like they're all going to be pretty popular. You know who's not going to be popular? Isaiah Likely is not going to be popular. This man is 3,300. He's built like a Greek Adonis. He is a beautiful, beautiful man that I cannot even tell you how he fell to where he did from
Coastal Carolina.
I love you so much. That's so fun to do. Isaiah Likely, 3,300 is my second highest tight end today. I am a sick human being, but if you want to get chalkier with some other spots in your lineup and you're looking for like that 1 point of deviation, sub 5%, I think Mike Gesicki ends up more popular than Isaiah Likely. Right now we have them at identical 4.2% ownership. He's just looked very, very good for this football team, has started to play tons of snaps. Now that week 18 was kind of a punt and they like let him go out and do some extra cardio. That was nice of them. But like you give me 15 or 10 from Isaiah Likely at 3,300. That could be enough if the other guys don't nuke the slate. I feel like he's going to be on the field here in some of these spots. They've released how many wide receivers? He's just one of the more important receiving targets for them.
Yeah, he is. He could end up being their wide receiver too. That's how bad their receivers actually are.
I don't know. It's just a guy that I'm getting to a ton today. And there are a lot of lineups where he's the only Baltimore piece that I'm getting to. Well, like that, nobody on Baltimore is popular. So there's definitely that. But I just wanted to give him a special shout out because he is a guy that I think the logic's there for him being a super low owned play that can make a major difference for you today.
Yeah, I like Isaiah Likely a lot too. And he's another one of these players you don't have to take a massive stand on to be over the field, which is another thing I like.
I'm pretty flat across the tight end position, but I have 28% of him, and that has him second on the tight end board. I have a little bit more Dawson Knox. Mark Andrews just behind him there. Again, pretty flat. Two tight ends, kind of a build that if you're trying to get away from two of the chalky, or if you're trying to get away from any of the chalky wide receiver options from the Giants side, maybe your best course of action is to try to play two tight ends. Worked out yesterday. Hey, whatever happened yesterday just happens today, right, Matt Gajewski? 4 minutes. 4 minutes to go. Let's talk defense to round it out here. There's 6 of them. What do you want me to say? I mean, the Bills project out the best as you would expect against Skylar Thompson, assuming he's playing most of the game. Bengals are expensive, yet they're pulling more ownership. I have a ton of the Ravens simply because they're 2,500, and I refuse to get to too much of the Dolphins at 2,300, even though definitely a case to be made for getting there. Who is your highest owned defense on the board today, Matt?
It's the Ravens. You said they're your highest?
Yes.
Yeah, we're in lockstep there.
Just
if you want to dive in,
and
if you want to dive into why the spread is not like above 10, so it's relatively close here. It's not quite as close as New York, Minnesota, but Burrow already takes a lot of sacks. He's down some starting offensive linemen, which isn't good. Ravens have a great defense. It's carried them to this point in the year through the Lamar injury. So for an under-owned defense, I'll take a stab on them.
All right, everybody. I think we got all of the super chats. Can't talk. All of the super chats answered. I think we had some fun today. We were kicking it. Always good to have my hot dog loving, just beautiful man over there, Matt Gajewski. Jordan Klein with the yellow hoodie, who keeps giving me these googly eyes as if I've done something. I always do something. It's always fun to be on a nice little
Jordan
tour
Klein.
Hour show with me on a Sunday morning. Skull baby. I'm nervous, but it's going to be a fun day of football. Hopefully you guys can make some money. Hopefully some things we said here really helped you out. Hit that like button on the way out if you haven't already, so we can keep doing these lovely shows. But my friend Matt Gajewski, any final words for the people as we get out of here?
Thank you guys for being here. Make some money today. Enjoy these games. We should have some good ones.
$1.99 Malcolm Revamp super chat for the way out here. Who was your wide receiver for both sites? So, I mean, we have lots of wide receivers. My highest owned wide receiver is Jamar Chase.
Oh, me too.
We're sick people.
We are. Either we're both going to be rich or shutting our laptops later today.
It's a little bit of this.
I hope so, man.
You think the Vikings win?
No, but I hope they do for your. I don't have a rooting interest in there, so you're the only Vikings fan I truly know that well, so I'm going to cheer for them for you.
Dolphins with the upset today. If that happens, Jay, you should probably have more than just your initial there and a pink avatar because the people must know who you are because you're from the future.
I like
Don't
betting
even-
the Dolphins. I see plus 14, like 2 touchdowns. Again, this could be Brock Purdy East. There's so many good players on this team, just not the QB. Against the spread, I don't think the Dolphins win.
Okay.
Against the
Brock
spread.
Purdy East. What was the relationship there? Don't
He
besmirch Iowa
plays in
State.
the West.
I know. But why would it be Brock Purdy East? Why are we?
Because it's
got it.
He's a quarterback that relies on all of the players around him to succeed. And maybe I'm selling Purdy a little short. I could be.
Yeah, you are. That's what I was getting at. I thought you were besmirching the good name of Brock Purdy. He's Brock Steady. He's Brock Solid. He's Broccolini.
What does this say about your Cyclones then? To
Dude,
underachieve for 3 years with him as the starter.
And Breece Hall. But we'll talk about that. And yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Alan Lazard. He's just. We had some
David
pieces.
Montgomery, Xavier Hutchinson, Charlie.
Oh,
Pilar.
Hutchinson's going to be a wagon. Get ready, folks. Actually, now he's just going to be okay. Let's get ourselves out of here. Jordan Klein's ready to go do some things. Let's go watch some football, shall we? He's Matt Gajewski. He's awesome. I'm Eric Lindquist. Go check out No House Advantage. Definitely do that on the way out. We'll see you guys later. Good luck, Vikes School.